Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's meeting of Scarborough and Whitby Area Committee. Our first item of business today is to elect a chair for the forthcoming year. Do we have a councillor who's willing to propose a fellow councillor? Councillor Basterman. Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Jeffels. All agreed. Thank you. Over to Councillor Conley. Thank you.
Thank you. So when I'm harsh on you, I'm not too harsh then. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support. Right. We sent out the timings on the agenda because I am aware that we do tend to drift a little. So if we could just bear that in mind, we've got some quite meaty items on here, and we've got colleagues from the, I was going to say the press, but you are the press. Communications at the back of the room. So we can keep our comments pithy but salient. That would be really helpful, please. So first item is apologies for absence. St John, what apologies have we got?
Yes, so we've received apologies from Councillor David Chance and Councillor Heather Phillips.
Oh, sorry, I should have said that because you did tell me. I apologise.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, item 3 is the election of a vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair, please? Councillor Swanwick.
I'd like to propose Councillor Roberta Swires, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Seabash. All those in any other nominations for vice chair? Important. Lovely. And all those in favour of Roberta? Please come to the table, Roberta. Thank you very much. Look forward to working with you. As you know, we've had 2 meetings since, 2 meetings that we've got minutes for, the 2nd of March and the 23rd of March. They are attached to all your papers. Has anyone got any comments on them? We don't really discuss them, but has anyone got any comments? No good. And in which case I will sign those as a true record. Are there any declarations of interest we need to be aware of, mindful of the items on the agenda? Janet, Councillor Jefferson.
Sorry, let's get organised, right. Item 12, okay. I chair Scarborough Anti-Theft Group, being President of Chamber of Trade, and I am also with the Schools Project report. One of the big trusts, on one of the big academy trusts. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we'll take governorships and involvement in schools as read because they'll be on declarations of interest, because I know there are at least 2 of us who are school governors, but it's good to alert us. Thank you for that. Okay, any more declarations of interest? We're good. Feedback from previous meetings. I've got 2 items to report to you. Clearly, we had a special meeting on water quality, and we are joined by Yorkshire Water today, so I'm not going to pick up those issues. There are 2 things to report to you. The first one is progress on the West Pier. So I've just spoken to Chris Bourne. The revised plans for the West Pier that are based on feedback from the last planning application that went in. There's a live consultation on the council website until July the 13th, and members of the public, councillors, everybody are encouraged to give their views, and we as a committee will be discussing with Chris how we feed into that. So thank you for that one. We don't normally take issues, but go on.
It was a question of the consultation. Clearly, you encourage councillors to participate in the consultation. I would say, as a councillor who is likely to be sitting on the strategic planning committee, I think I'm not alone on that, making that decision ultimately, then I will not be taking part in the consultation.
That's fine. We do not check up on which councillors made, but I think you're right. If you're on strategic planning, stay away.
Likewise, Madam Chair.
Okay. And likewise. And then the other item, which is a little bit of good news, is progress and an update on Scarborough Sports Village. As you know, the committee spent some time looking into this, and some of us had a briefing, or were able to attend a briefing yesterday with Matt Hewitson. So Wilmot Dixon completed all the civil drainage work and the Type 3 layer on the 20th of May. And Sports Lab tested this for porosity on the 21st of May, and that's to make sure that the water is draining as it's supposed to drain, which obviously it didn't do last time. Wilmot Dixon completed the tarmac layer on the 27th of May, and that was tested. And the tarmac layer is the one that I think people have been concerned about because it looks pretty grim. But that is an essential layer before the next bit goes on. SIS, I wish I could remember what SIS stood for, but I'm afraid I can't. But they are one of the international leaders in sports pitches, have been on the site since the 1st of June, and they're going to install a shock pad by the 5th of June. That's today, isn't it? Yes, so they're installing the shock pad this week. And then the green bit that we can all see is apparently called the carpet. And the carpet installation will be on the 8th of June. So all that work together will be completed and tested by the 26th of June. And NYC officers are in regular contact with the two main clubs that use the pitch, which are Scarborough Athletic and Scarborough Ladies, to assist with their transition back to using the pitch for the beginning of the season. So it's been a rough year, especially for Scarborough Athletic playing away at Bridlington, but we have got there, and that comes with the guarantees. Wilmot Dixon have been very good at meeting their obligations, is all I'm allowed to say on that one. So there we go. Right, I am now on item 7, which is public questions and statements. I'll take Mel Bonney first. Linda, would you like to come down to a microphone for when you ask your question? Yeah, Mel, are you all right for Linda to progress while you're asking your question? Yeah, please, thank you. Floor's yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking today on behalf of Coast and Vale Community Action. Over the last 3 years, through our Finding Our Voice programme, community power work with the National Lottery, our facilitation of the local VCSE Alliance, and other engagement work, including that for the Pride in Place programme, we have listened to more than 1,300 local unique voices across Scarborough. What we heard was remarkably consistent. People told us they care deeply about their town and communities. They value Scarborough's people, natural environment and community spirit. However, they also spoke about visible decline, housing pressures, fragmented services, lack of opportunities for young people, and a growing sense of distance from decision making. Perhaps the most important finding was that communities are not disengaged or apathetic. People want to be involved and have ideas for improving their neighbourhoods. What many lack is the confidence that their involvement will lead to meaningful change. We found that trust has not disappeared, but it has shifted. People are more likely to trust local relationships, community groups, and organisations rooted in place than distant institutions and formal consultation processes. Our report concludes that the challenge for Scarborough is not how to get people engaged, but how to turn existing care, local knowledge, and community action into genuine influence and shared decision making. My question is, given that local people are willing to engage but often feel unable to influence decisions, what practical steps will the Scarborough and Whitby Area Committee take over the next 12 months to ensure residents and the voluntary and community sector organisations have a meaningful role in shaping decisions and priorities affecting their communities? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I have a response that talks about the area committee. But my understanding is, and I did attend a community power event on, I think it was Tuesday, is it Tuesday? There are wider issues, so we can perhaps as a committee come back to that later. But I'll give you the response I've got and you've got a supplementary question. As set out in the Council's Constitution, area committees have an important function in acting as a forum for local issues to be raised by the public and parish town councils through questions and statements, and providing for visible local democracy and accountability for divisional and executive members through public meetings held in each of the committee areas, acting as consultees in major decisions affecting their area and to influence policy development and the strategic agenda of the council, and providing meaningful scrutiny to local issues within their area, complementing the strategic work undertaken by the council's 6 overview and scrutiny committees. I will add something that's not mentioned here, I think, is that all the scrutiny committees and all area committees are meetings held in public, and everyone has time for public questions at the beginning of the meeting, as you've done today. Actually, our public questions are usually really quite well attended. We get a lot. We had 10, I think, on one occasion, and once many more when Janet was in the chair once. Sorry, Janet. In the case of Whitby, Scarborough and Whitby, public questions and petitions have been the trigger for further work undertaken by the Area Committee to investigate the public's concerns and to lobby on behalf of the public by making recommendations to the Council's executive, which makes the final decisions. A good recent example, and it is recent, is Whitby Cliff Lift, which features in the Area Committee annual report for 25-26, and to be considered on item 17A, which was considered at a previous meeting. Last September, the committee backed a petition to save the lift and recommend that Anglo-American be invited to carry out further inspection after the winter. The results of Anglo-American's inspection was brought back to the committee in March, which is the minutes I'm just going to sign off, when members expressed strong support for reinstating the lift, highlighting its importance as a heritage asset for accessibility and to Whitby's visitor economy. It was the committee's unanimous and vociferous support for reinstating Whitby Cliff Lift, which was instrumental in persuading the executive not to decommission that lift and instead to commission an up-to-date survey, including full costings for potential reinstatement, and to work with Whitby Town Council and community representatives to develop options based on accurate evidence. And it was a concern of this committee that the data we saw was not up to date. In respect of the next 12 months, we would therefore encourage residents and community organisations to engage with the Area Committee by submitting public questions and petitions. On that note, can I say that both myself and St John are always available to talk to anybody who thinks they've got a public question, and St John can guide you through the process of submitting that question. Whilst the Area Committee continues to ensure through our work programme that members are consulted on the major decisions affecting this area, so we and you, the public, can influence policy development and the strategic agenda of the Council. Further, it is worth noting that members of the community can raise issues directly with their local councillors, who in turn can ask that these be included on the work programme for this committee, subject to agreement by the committee and some preliminary assessment work by officers. I've got a number of items that I would like to add to the work programme today, and we've certainly reflected that in the work programme in the past. So there's the opportunity for a supplementary question if you have one.
Thank you, Chair. I think it goes without saying from Coast and Vale Community Action that our engagement with North Yorkshire Council and our elected members is very positive, and I'd like to thank you all for that level of engagement. What we would like to see is how we can use those really positive human relationships to influence other systems leaders to address issues such as fragmented services in our communities.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much for your question, and the committee, when we get to the work programme, will consider anything that we want to add on to that. Thanks very much. Councillor Wild, Linda, would you like to come to the hot seat? Morning.
Yep. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for giving me the time. So my question is, locally known Danger Bank is the name for the steep section of Glen Esk Road, linking Whitby to Russup. This road has been closed since August 24 as a result of a major road slip. This road has been closed for 18 months, causing local traffic to take longer alternative routes, thus causing congestion elsewhere. North Yorkshire Council indicate that they have been reviewing funding, and as a result, major repairs to this road will take place later this year, 2026. Can North Yorkshire Council please now confirm that funding is in place and the necessary repairs to Danger Bank will be undertaken in 2026 to rectify this long-standing problem that causes great inconvenience to local traffic and all road users? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Wild. I'm afraid I don't have assurance that it will be 2026, but I'll read you the response from the Highways team. Design and funding were in place for the repair works to be carried out in 2026. However, following further extensive slippage over the winter period, the original design is no longer considered feasible and it cannot be amended in time to allow the works to proceed this year. An options review is currently underway with a revised design to be developed this year with the aim of delivering the works as soon as possible in 2027. You have a supplementary question?
Well, can I just say, we don't have a butcher's shop in Whitby, and to get to the butcher's in Russup, we have to travel miles. And that was the road where people, I mean, that's just one example of the necessity of it. In the traffic round Whitby, in summer and more or less all year round, it's just impossible. So I'm very, very disappointed on behalf of the people in Whitby that this is not going to be done till 27. And we've got complete assurance that it will be done then, because the longer this goes on, the more slippage and more impossible the situation will be.
Yeah, I can understand your point, absolutely. All I can tell you is the aim of delivering the works as soon as possible in 2027. Again, the committee can choose to pick that up in its work programme when we get to the work programme later on today.
Right.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. And please do try and pick it up if you can. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Right. Item 8 is Alison Hume MP. Welcome, Alison, again to our area committee. Good to see you. And we'd welcome your views on things that are interesting and your work you're doing for the area committee area. And we do have at least 2 questions that I know you're aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to be here again. Sorry I missed the last meeting, but it's good to be back in the hot seat. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've been doing, and then I know that councillors like to ask me questions, so I'll leave plenty of time for that. The first thing to say is that I've continued to work hard for our constituents in Scarborough and Whitby, and it remains the privilege of my life to be the Member of Parliament for Scarborough and Whitby, which is why I was absolutely delighted to welcome the Secretary of State for Housing and Communities, Steve Reid, to Scarborough yesterday. It was a whistle-stop tour, and he was here to look at some of the projects that Pride in Place are funding, thanks to the priorities of Scarboroughians. So we went to the Brunswick Centre, the Stephen Joseph Theatre, and the Sidewalk Community Charity, and it went really well. Steve had never been to Scarborough before, so I was quite disappointed that I only had an hour with him, because obviously I wanted to take him to the seafront and give him fish and chips, but I did give him a hat with "I love Scarborough" on it and a fridge magnet, so hopefully he'll come back. But it was very, very good to see him in Scarborough, and just to underline this priority for the government, which is Pride in Place and the commitment of nearly £20 million over 10 years. And I'm really excited to be on the neighbourhood board. I believe it's a good working professional body that reflects the priorities of residents, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else we can do on that. So that visit was yesterday. My work, I've held 18 surgeries since I last reported here, opened 5,718 cases on behalf of constituents, and closed 4,702 cases. So gives you an idea of the workload that myself and my small staff have. I'm working as a parliamentarian, as chair of the APPG for coastal communities, do a lot of work in Parliament, and most recently welcomed young people from coastal communities across the UK to Parliament and heard about their priorities. I'm also the chair of autism, the APPG for autism, doing important work on feeding into the government's white paper, and I sit on the backbench business committee, which I'll just sort of illuminate you a little about that. It's a really interesting committee where every week we hear presentations from backbench MPs to hold debates on the things that that's important to them, and that's not government time, and then we allot time in Westminster Hall and the Chamber, and it's great because it means that members can put
bring forward priorities for them and present them. And in fact, that's how I got my debate on fracking, and I'll be doing the same on stroke services and also some work I'm doing around the family courts. So that's in Parliament. A quick summary of the work that I've been doing. Obviously, I welcome the Chancellor's Great British Summer Savings announcement a few weeks ago. So we'll see VAT slashed on from 20% to 5% on activities, children's meals and attractions. And I'm already hearing from businesses in Scarborough and Whitby. This is very welcome. Of course, they want the they want the cut to stay permanent, but I don't think the Chancellor can afford that. But nevertheless, in August, it does mean that there'll be free bus travel for children. And I've already been in touch with our bus operators to check that they've got capacity, because what I said in Parliament was I don't want our local children squeezed off the buses, because you will have a rise in tourists, which of course we welcome. But we want our children to be able to get on the buses. So I'm talking to the bus operators about that. I had a Prime Minister's question this week, and I asked him if he agreed that Mission Coastal will deliver a transformational impact for young people. And Mission Coastal is something I'm really proud to have helped deliver here in Scarborough and Whitby, which will be starting from September. We've been selected as one of 2 areas nationally to take part in the pilot. And Chair, you'll be pleased to know that when I asked them, is it just Scarborough, can we include Whitby, they said, we're going to be using the old Scarborough borders, the old borough council borders. So I think it will be including a lot of villages and a larger area, but I don't know. I've written to the Department of Education to get that confirmed. So what Mission Coastal is it's designed to tackle entrenched disadvantages in areas like ours, and it's inspired by something that the last Labour government did called the London Challenge, where they went into deprived schools in London and really raised educational outcomes. I don't have all the details you probably want, but it's going to be about bringing there will be money coming in, but we'll be building new partnerships between schools, employers, youth organisations and clubs. And so as part of the work to push for Mission Coastal, I held 4 SEND consultations across the constituency, 3 for parents and 1 for teachers. And the one for teachers and staff we held it at Graham School, and the Minister, Georgia Gould, joined us on a live link and took questions directly from the floor. And the feedback was from the head teachers and staff there that they felt it was a really good experience, that government came down and met people working at the coalface, and that I'm really proud that I was able to facilitate that. Also have run lots of surveys feeding into the white paper. Because it's an important piece of work. We've got to get the SEND reforms right for our children, and I think that the white paper plus Mission Coastal it's really going to deliver. I made a speech about the Esk Valley Railway and asked the Minister about how Great British Railways will improve transport links to small towns like Whitby. I've been calling for reform to the family justice system so that we can ensure children are put first in child contact arrangements. And I'm working on an amendment to the Courts and Tribunals Bill on this. In the King's Speech debate, I called on the government to close the loophole that allows companies to carry out small-scale fracking. I've been pushing on how we support young people with autism into employment. And I've also spoken up on behalf of one of my constituents calling for tighter regulation to prevent the mis-selling of park homes, and I believe that's something that the council are looking into. So now it's come to my attention, there seems to be a lot of mis-selling and suffering as a result of that. Requested support from the Prime Minister to support farmers with the cost of red diesel, and I was delighted to see that was answered with a cut to that. Just looking through everything I've done. Obviously, I've been working on calling for a government recovery framework for wildfires, like the one currently in place for flooding. I'm hoping to bring a 10-minute rule bill on that I know that there has been some talk now of the government not compensating the small number of businesses and farmers from the last fire, which I'm disappointed about. But I do understand there's going to be substantial money coming in from the government to support the restoration of the moors. And I would say I will keep working on this so that the next time, and there unfortunately will be a next time when there's a wildfire, that there is a recovery grant scheme in place for businesses and farmers. Okay, just a couple more things before I go to questions. I continue to campaign for Scarborough Hospital to be able to scan for strokes and provide treatment. And I hope that there's going to be a small announcement coming in the future. And I've met with the Minister for Secondary Care about this, and I'm holding a debate in the near future on the fact that North Yorkshire doesn't have a 24/7 thrombectomy service. Money has gone into improving the service in Leeds, but not into Hull to make it 24/7. And thrombectomy is the clot busting intervention that we really need to have 24/7 access to. So I've covered fracking, wildfire, red diesel, send. I've got loads more, but I bet you've got questions. So, or just to finish quickly, something that's really, as councillors, I really want you to hear is that something that's been filling up my inbox is the fallout from the decision about home to school transport. And I would just ask you all, and I'm sure it's filling your inboxes, but particularly in the Whitby area, you know, why we're sort of not using Whitby as a magnet for children in the area. But the policy seems to be that we're splitting siblings up and sending children to schools where others from the area have not gone. So a constituent, Leanne Cattle, has allowed me to use her name. The catchment school for Hinderwell is Whitby, where the children have always gone, but she's been told, due to the way the rules have been applied, that she'll only get transport to the nearest school, which is outside of the county. And I've got lots of people whose children are being sent to various schools. So I'll just leave that one with you, because that's one from me to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm aware of 4 councillors with questions and 2 I was pre-notified of. So David Jeffels, you want to do your question first?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Alison. I have a question for you. So far as the rural economy is concerned, bearing in mind that this area relies very heavily on farming and tourist industries, as indeed does the whole of North Yorkshire. My question is whether you feel you could support and help instigate rural life in this constituency and in rural areas in general by having a government ministry which would have sole responsibility for such issues, as opposed to being tagged onto an existing department. Because we aren't just looking at the industries per se, it's all the other industries indirectly which benefit from both farming and from tourism, and the community life as well, such as village shops, future of schools, which is a big issue in our area, and I think if we could help revive our rural economies, it would go a long way towards establishing a sound future for them and nationally for the economy. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffels. And can I just say how much I enjoyed our joint visit to St Helens Caravan Park and Wycombe Primary School. Thank you very much for welcoming me there. And I had the honour of planting a cherry tree, so that means I'll go back every year and check it's okay. So thank you. Well, I wish we'd had this question before I met Steve Reid yesterday. I could have asked him directly. I think a Minister for Rural Communities is a fantastic idea. I caveat that by saying I also think a Minister for Coastal Communities is a great idea, and I'm getting absolutely nowhere with my campaign on that. The answer is that the current
departments, MHCLG and DEFRA, should be able to cover any of the issues faced by rural and coastal communities. But like you, I think if there was a person in place with that one sole objective, and it would really concentrate the mind and actually get something done, because I do think that rural and coastal communities are overlooked in the current power structure and the way things work. Isn't it also with devolution the role of the mayor to be making sure that they have somebody who is dedicated to the rural area? Now, I'm not sure whether Mayor Scaife has this, but that would be my first comment on that. And of course, you're completely right that the rural economy is absolutely crucial, not only to counties like North Yorkshire, but for the whole country. And, you know, with growing pressures, for example, of the solar panels on agricultural land and things like that, we do need oversight. So I'd be happy to talk to you more about that and present a case, but I'm not sure I can deliver it, David, but I'll try.
Thank you. Councillor Swanwick, Neil? Alison, I think you need to switch your mic. Thanks.
Sort of green and orange on mine, so I'm not used to that. Anyway, I'll try on with Councillor Moores, which he's very kindly passed over to me. Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, Alison. I did circulate the article that generated my question to you in advance, because I thought you, with your busy life, you might not be an avid reader of The Negotiator, which is, I believe, a trade publication for estate agents. But they did manage to find a little quote, which I thought was very interesting. And I have to say, they have in the past been kind enough to report on the comments that I've made in this chamber and elsewhere about the preponderance of second homes and short-term lets in our constituency. And this is about that as well, as I'm sure Alison was expecting. It says, the headline is, and this was on the 21st of April, 2026, second homes tax loophole may be closed. The government is considering giving local authorities additional powers to help strengthen council tax rules, according to Housing Minister Matthew Pennycook. And it goes on to say that Labour is reviewing rules that allow second homeowners to avoid paying council tax by reclassifying their properties as holiday lets and moving them into the business rates system, with pressure mounting to close the loophole. I won't read the rest of the article, but it sets out the particular loophole. And it does talk about a commitment, which from Matthew Pennycook, the Housing Minister, which says additional powers for councils on short-term lets and second home taxation are under review. He told the Commons, the government appreciates that the excessive concentration of short-term lets can impact on the availability and affordability of homes, both to rent and to buy. We continue to consider what additional powers we might give local authorities to enable them to respond to the pressures created by such concentrations, which I think probably most of us in this chamber would welcome. I haven't seen that elsewhere, though it does refer to a reference in the Telegraph, which unfortunately is not a paper that I read on a regular basis. But maybe our MP could explain what exactly Matthew Pennycook was saying there and what he's likely to be planning for the future, which I'm sure we'd all be very interested to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swanwick, for your presentation on the current situation of Airbnbs. It won't come as any surprise to you to hear that myself and other MPs, such as Rachel Maskell, continue to have conversations with the government about getting a move on, getting a move on, not only with the licensing scheme, which I believe is the only way that we'll be able to regulate short-term lets, but with the registration scheme, which is coming imminently. And that we have to regulate short-term lets because it's forcing residents in places like Whitby, as we know, out of the towns that they grew up in. And we are reviewing the rules, as you've alluded to, that allow second homeowners to avoid paying council tax by reclassifying their properties as holiday lets and moving them into the business rate system. Members will be aware that under the current rules, owners can qualify for small business rates relief by letting a property for at least 70 nights a year and making it available for 140 days. And this means that in many cases they're not paying council tax or business rates if they let only one property. So the situation, Councillor Swanwick, at the moment is we're expecting something by the autumn on this. The registration scheme will be going ahead, which will make short-term lets providers aware of their legal responsibilities, particularly around safety, and that will help raise standards of accommodation and build consumer confidence. And it will also help local areas like North Yorkshire analyse the impact of short-term let accommodation on housing. So that's coming, and there'll be an announcement in the next couple of months. I'm sorry, I don't have anything more concrete.
Thank you. Councillor Ulrich.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Alison. The government's response to your stroke petition effectively endorsed the current stroke service configuration and rejected the case for restoring acute stroke provision at Scarborough. Given that response, what are your next steps? I've heard that you are holding a debate and you are pressing to encourage a thrombectomy service in North Yorkshire, but what evidence do you believe could realistically persuade ministers or NHS decision makers to reconsider this position? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. As you know, this is a campaign very close to our hearts, and there's only one word I can use really to describe my feeling about my campaign at the moment, and that's frustration. It has been quite eye-opening to discover that you just can't get access to data which we know people hold, but they don't want to give you. So my office has tried freedom of information from the York and Scarborough NHS Trust, and they've said they don't hold the information on the number of people from the area presenting with strokes to York Hospital, and they asked us to get in touch with the ICB. We got in touch with the ICB and they said they don't have it either. Get in touch with the Trust. And I brought this to the attention of the Minister, who's no longer in his post, but you'll be aware there's quite a lot of churn in government, and I will be bringing it to the attention of the new Minister about this problem about data, because I actually think that data is at the heart of this issue. And you're right to say that the response to the government, my petition, wasn't correct. And it's incorrect because they are using data that was gathered from metropolitan and city areas and informed the national stroke strategy. And my view, as I've got more and more into looking into this, is that the strategy needs reviewing because it doesn't cover the needs of rural and coastal communities. So, I mean, I'm not a medic and I'm not an expert, but I do see, and I am good at picking out errors. And I'm not saying that the whole strategy is wrong, and please don't report me on that, you guys in the corner. But I think it needs reviewing. And I'm really pleased that the new Chief Executive of the York and Scarborough NHS Trust comes from a background where she understands remote, rural and coastal issues. So I believe that even though the government strategy is working against us. What's happening on the ground here in Scarborough and the work that people are doing in the medical profession will inform a new stroke strategy. So it's a very long way round of saying that I think we know more, and we've got to get them to accept that. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Councillor Basterman, Derek.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Alison, and thanks for coming along. First of all, Alison, I'd like to thank you for the support you gave us against the fracking application and for highlighting the loophole within the planning process. And as Chair of the Crustacean Die-Off Working Group, I'm grateful to Alison and her involvement in the Coastal APPG for helping to try and resolve issues there with the die-off. And also as Chair of the LJ Coastal Special Interest Group, thank Alison for highlighting common coastal issues and supporting the SIG's call for a coastal minister, which you've already alluded to, Alison. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Basterman, and for your kind words, and for I've really enjoyed working with you and the local parish council in Burnaston to achieve a very good outcome, and thank you to everybody who supported on a local level about the Europa oil and gas planning application to frack in Burnaston. It is now up to the government to ensure that all forms of fracking are included in the ban, which will be coming into the bill. I asked a question in the King's Speech, and Michael Shanks, the minister, was sitting there listening, and I caught him in the lobby afterwards, and I said, "So, Minister Shanks, when are we going to close this loophole?" And the answer is that they're looking at ways of doing that. And I am like a dog with a bone, and I will not give up until that loophole is closed. And if the next step is to lay an amendment, I'll be laying an amendment, because the problem is that going forward there'll be no new fracking, but we've got 66 licenses currently live, and I've always said, and I have to put my teeth in before I say this, is that Burnaston is on the fracking front line, and therefore what happens in Burnaston could happen anywhere in the country. So we'll continue to work on that, and on the crustacean die-off, that was an egregious overlook on the part of the last government, I'm afraid, and DEFRA, who turned their back on the evidence and basically didn't do anything. And it's a very, very poor response. Going forward, the APPG for coastal communities will look at any evidence from the committees that you sit on, and if necessary, take it forward. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. I've got 3 more questions and my eyes on the clock. Next up is Councillor Ritchie. John.
Thank you, Chair. Alison, as a governor at 3 schools in Scarborough, I'm absolutely delighted that the area was included in the Mission Coastal Strategy, especially given the implementation of the Children's Wellbeing Act, the enormous difficulties there are with SEND reform. It's really good to know that we are the government recognises the special needs that there are in this little part of the world. I'm aware that you don't, as yet, we're not abreast of the detail of what Mission Coastal will mean for the town. But what could I ask that at the very earliest opportunity, members of this area committee are kept up to date with, so we can inform schools and our own local communities what it's going to actually mean for them.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie, and that's a very good point. And I do know that the DFE will be and are already working closely with the people in the council. So I will make sure that I also add my voice to that. I am really, really excited about Mission Coastal, and I think it will give schools who do an incredible job, the teachers and the staff in very difficult circumstances, in many cases, a real boost. By putting money in and bringing people together, I really hope it will, and I know it will, improve outcomes for young people. One of the things I've said to Minister Gould, which I think should be a focus because it is a pilot, is that we have hundreds and hundreds of children currently out of school because their needs are not being met in school because of the lack of provision for special educational needs. And whether that is a transition back into school using alternative settings or whatever, I believe that has to be a priority. This is about children who are not getting education now. And if we want to deliver Mission Coastal, it's got to focus on the crisis that we're looking at now. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. You'll be aware that we've got a schools update this afternoon, and Mission Coastal was something I was going to ask, but I accept they won't have all the information, and I do think the area committee should be adding that to their work programme, and it's one of my suggestions for later on today. Councillor Broadbent, Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Alison, really, it's just a thank you for all your hard work, which your presentation that you gave us this morning, and rather than a question, it's a response to your last statement regards the home to school transport. At the moment, I mean, the home to school transport is I'm a member of the appeals committee, and we are having more and more appeals on the new rules. There's a lot of contentious items, and I think at the end of this month I'm chairing a ombudsperson's request on an appeal on the appeal. But I could just like to assure you that I think things are bending slightly or changing. For instance, if a parent wanted to use their occupation as a rule not to send their child to a certain school, that we could not take that into consideration. The rules are bending slightly now, so hopefully we can look after more and more children and, as you say, get them the education they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for that response, Councillor Broadbent, and I appreciate what you're saying about the rules may be changing, but I do believe that the policy is wrong. I've seen from my own constituents pain, too many people not really understanding why their council are sort of doing this. I know it's because of money, but for example, one constituent from Mickleby, where the nearest school is Lythe, except not as the crow flies, they've got siblings at Lythe, but not eligible for transport. And it just is lack of common sense. And as I said before, sorry, Chair, just because I do want to say this again, is that we should be supporting Whitby Secondary School as the school that children should be feeding into, rather than sending our young people into schools outside of the county where they won't be forming the friendships and the links that we want to keep them in the area going forward. I mean, it's about community, and I feel that the homeschool transport is actually breaking down the community in Whitby and the villages. Thank you, Chair.
I didn't put my mic on. Councillor Seston, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Alison. I appreciate this might require a follow-up response. It's slightly in-depth. It's just an issue I want to raise, which is maintenance fees on new build developments. So for those who don't know, before the council adopt the roads in new build developments, you're charged a maintenance fee to cover things like maintenance of the road, drainage, street lighting, all the stuff the council would do if the council owned the road. Some residents in Eastfield on the developments there were originally told it would be, quote, 2 or 3 years before the roads would be adopted, which now 5 or 6 years they haven't been. And in that time, the maintenance fees for some residents has gone from £200 a year to £440 a year. And there's also cases where, like, a resident's reported a street light as defective, and they then billed the resident for the repair of the street light. And there's all sorts of stuff like this going on. And I think it's another mis-selling scandal. And I think it probably requires national level attention. I did raise it at full council as to why isn't the council adopting the roads, and there's a quite long answer, but the short answer was the council will only adopt the roads when we're invited to adopt the roads, and the developers aren't inviting them in a hurry. Because, you know, if you think about if you're charging £440 a year, if you've got a street of 20 or so houses, no, I'm not going to do maths in public. 20 or so houses. You're looking at about £10,000 a year to realistically do some light gardening. Yeah, there's some firms making quite a lot of money off of this, and equally some the different developers in there. Some of them haven't raised their fees. Some of them have more than doubled their fees, citing rising costs. Well, how can the cost of that street be more than doubled than the cost of that street for the same thing? Yeah, it is a scandal in the waiting, I think.
Alison, before you come in, just to make you even more miserable, in my division, which was Councillor Rich's division many years ago, we still have some unadopted roads. And I know you're familiar with those because we've been on a site visit. And sometimes it's because the roads are up to North Yorkshire Council standard. We've certainly got one like that. I think all the others are now adopted. But I think the whole thing about developers charging residents is disgraceful. And I didn't mean to steal your thunder because I'm sure you'll say something similar.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Sesson. That's it won't surprise you to know that the issue of unadopted roads has been brought to the government's attention by many MPs, including myself, as Councillor Colling mentioned. I would be interested in working with you on this issue because we have a group of MPs working on the unadopted roads and pressuring the government to move on this because we are aware. So could we take this outside the room and talk further? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have to get in touch and we'll work something out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming. It's really interesting to see the depth of work you do and the breadth of the work. It makes me feel exhausted just listening to you. And thank you to your team for the support they give when we email in with queries and stuff, and for picking up issues when we hit the brick wall. So that's always good to know. And I see you've got lots of follow-up. So thank you very much for your attendance. Yet again, you're very welcome to stay with us as long as you can.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to everybody for the support you give me.
Thank you. Right, we're on to item 9, which is the annual report of performance against the safety plan, Port and Marine Facilities Safety Code. And we're joined by Chris Bourne, who's no stranger to the committee, but I'll give him his fancy title, Head of Harbours and Coastal Infrastructure. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm sure as coastal members, you would all agree that the harbours, the ports, the cobble landing at Farley, these are the jewels in the crown of North Yorkshire. They attract many visitors, residents visit them regularly, but they're also a working environment, and with that working environment comes some high risk as well. So safety within the ports is a very important issue, and we have safety management systems to make sure that we comply with government requirements. We have safety policies and a safety plan, and these all set out how our harbours will be managed in accordance with the National Port and Marine Facilities Safety Code and its associated Guide to Good Practice, which is the document published by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, which sets out the standards that ports should be aiming to achieve for safety in their environments. So it's really about enhancing safety for everyone who uses or works in the harbour. Members, I'm sure, will recall that in 2024 we had an external MCA inspection. The external inspections by the MCA are really the gold standard in inspections. They are independent. They are unquestionable. They go into great depths, and if they say you're poor, you're poor, and if they say you're good, you're good. I am very pleased that hopefully you will recall that when we were last inspected by the MCA in 2024, they gave us a score of 9 out of 10 with 1 amber rating. So from 2024, we were already, as a series of harbours and ports, in a very, very good place. What happened next is that the DFT and the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency published new updated guidance. It's an evolving system. They published updated guidance and they gave harbour authorities until March 2026 to certify their compliance with the new updated standards. What we have done in that period is work to update our systems to make sure that they comply with the new standards. And our safety systems are now aligned with the standards that are contained in the revised guide and the guide to good practice. The MCA tend to only come and inspect on an 8-yearly cycle. There's a lot of ports in the UK to inspect. So you can expect an external MCA inspection every 8 years. But you can't let it lapse for 8 years. You'd have to maintain your diligence. The Port Marine Safety Code suggests that you should have an audit every 3 years. We've decided we would like to be better than that. We want to do an audit every year. And we do our audits in 2 ways as well. We have independent audits by marine safety consultants, or we can also have independent audits by the person that is known as our designated person. The designated person is the independent person who provides assurance on safety in ports to the duty holder. The duty holder is Carl Battersby, the Director of Environment. And it's important that he can reach out to somebody independent of the Harbour Service when he needs to make sure that health and safety is complied with. The appointment of the designated person was the amber issue that we got in the 2024 report. At that time, the designated person was an internal appointment. It was the assistant director at the time. What the MCA picked up in that inspection was that the assistant director wasn't independent of the executive director. It was effectively under his control. So we got an amber score on that. What the council has subsequently done is appoint an external designated person to make sure that there is entire independence outside of the council process. And so this time, because of the new guidance, we asked the designated person as our independent external person to do a full audit of all of the issues within the harbour, all of the systems within the harbour. And that audit was carried out from September until January. And I'm pleased to say that in March, we were able to certify our compliance with the Port Marine Safety Code to the Department for Transport. And this time in doing so, we had a score of 10 out of 10. We were green across all areas. So there was an improvement. Anecdotally, a month later, we were at the UK Harbour Masters Conference. And at that time, the MCA approached us and we were anecdotally informed that at that time, approximately only 50% of the ports in the UK have been able to certify their compliance with the Port Marine Safety Code. So we're in that top 50%. What has also been happening is that the Harbour Master has been providing assistance to what are termed facilities owners. So whilst the council maintains and operates the harbour, there are some independent facilities within the harbour environment, some businesses, marine shipbuilding businesses, waiting pontoons that are provided by yacht clubs, that type of thing. Those facilities all have to comply, and they're not used to complying with these documents. This is a new requirement placed upon them. So the Harbour Master has been reaching out to all of the facilities providers in Scarborough and Whitby. There are none in Farley, but in Scarborough and Whitby, and providing his assistance to make sure that the facilities are also able to certify their compliance. The other thing that I'd like to mention is other systems that are in place for checking health and safety. We get reports from harbour users about health and safety issues within the harbour. And one such example was that there was a report that diving was being carried out in an unsafe manner. That was reported to the designated person who carried out his own independent report and assessment on the claims that were being made. And he found that there was no case to answer. But he carried out that independent assurance, and he was able to assure the duty holder that there was no issues. We also had an impromptu visit by the Health and Safety Executive a couple of weeks ago as well, prompted by reports from a local fisherman. And again, the Health and Safety Executive Inspector was satisfied there were no issues. So I'm very pleased to conclude by saying that we've got a clean bill of health. We had a clean bill of health with the MCA in 2024. The recent audit by the designated person has enabled us to certify our compliance, and we have a clean bill of health there. And also the designated person and the health and safety executive have carried out recent inspections and visits. And again, it's all compliant. I'd like to finish really by accrediting this work to the harbour master. Gary Pearson has done an awful lot of hard work in doing this. It comes under a lot of pressure from harbour users, and the fact that he has been able to carry out this new piece of work with this new updated document and get North Yorkshire Council's harbours into a place where they are all compliant within the time frame is a credit to his achievement. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the report, and please convey the committee's thanks to Mr Pearson as well, because it's really pleasing to see. I've got a couple of detailed questions which I probably should have asked you beforehand. I'm familiar with near miss in what used to be my professional life, but can you just give us a flavour of what near misses might be in the harbour? Because the list of things that could go wrong seems quite comprehensive. And secondly, what are miscellaneous? Things that don't fit in another box.
Okay. A near miss. I'll use the diving example that I gave the committee a few minutes ago. So the actual complaint from the harbour user about unsafe diving practices was in respect of allegations of near misses. So a near miss is when a fishing vessel or any other vessel within the harbour comes too close to the divers that are in the water. The way that you signify divers are in the water is by I won't get too technical on this, but you raise flags and you display flags, and the flags are standard marine flags that signify to marine users that there are divers in the water and you should keep clear. If a vessel comes too close to the divers in the water, that can be classified as a near miss. And that was the allegation that was made in this case, that a vessel had come too close. The allegation was also that the flags were not being displayed. But the designated person was able to investigate, and there was actually CCTV evidence of the incident itself. The flags were in place, and the vessel that passed by close by the divers was outside of the safety zone. So a near miss is when they're inside the safety zone. Miscellaneous. I need to look at that. If I'm genuinely honest with you, I don't know. I don't know.
I should have tipped you off. I was going to ask that question.
If I had been tipped off, I would have asked the deputy harbour master who prepared these.
Can you just drop things in a note?
But I will. I will ask the deputy harbour master what is a miscellaneous incident, and I will report. It
might be bucket and spade in the water, because that's not on the list. Thank you. Councillor Sharma Subash.
Just to follow on, you said when something is too close, that's quite a subjective statement. And you also mentioned an area of safety. Could you be a little bit more specific about in meters as to what that entails?
I'm not an expert in this area, but I believe it's 10 meters. But what you can do is you can put an exclusion zone in place by floating booms around the area that you're working in, so that effectively if a vessel bumps into a boom, they ought to know that they've hit the boom and steer away. But that's what it's about.
Thank you. I guess from different perspectives, vehicles or boats can look nearer than they actually are because of where you stood. Where you stood on the harbour. But yeah, appreciate the answer. Has anybody else got any other questions for Chris? Right, so we've got the recommendation. So we are the meeting that will provide overview and scrutiny of compliance with the Marine Code. If you're content that you have done that, then the recommendation is to accept and acknowledge the Harbour Authority's report of performance against the recommendations of the Port and Marine Facilities Safety Code. And given we got 10 out of 10, I think that's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Can all those in favour just put their hands up? And again, convey our thanks, please. Thank you very much indeed. Absolutely. It's really important that we do this. Thank you very much indeed. We're ahead of ourselves. It's a first time for everything, isn't there? So we will go on to item 10, which is a presentation from Yorkshire Water. Can I welcome Miles Cameron, Manager of Strategic Partnerships, And I am really sorry. It says on my list, Adam Ashman. Are you joining or are you just in for support? You all right there? Yeah. Hi, Miles. Nice to see you again. So again, Miles is no stranger to the committee. You remember we last met him formally in March, and we've had an informal briefing since. The floor's yours. We've all got the presentation. We assume councillors have read it, but if there's anything you want to particularly draw our attention to, and then we'll go to questions. Thank you.
No problem, Chair, and thank you, members, for inviting us along. I'm hoping this will be part of a series of updates for the committee going forward as well. I'm certainly happy myself and my colleagues. And again, my head of partnerships, Adam Ashman, does give us apologies for not being here today. He's treble booked, I believe, so apologies for that. So there's a lot of information in the slides you have in front of you, and I hope we've had a chance to read them through. I'll make a point of maybe just picking out headlines, if that's okay. I know part of the thrust of today was to talk a bit about the investment in the town, in our infrastructure, and I think that's really important to draw that out today, and how we want to continue to engage with the council, with customers, with key stakeholders going forward. And I think that's the bit I want to draw out as we get towards the end of the presentation. So again, as a glance in the slides, you can see that Yorkshire Water itself serves 5.5 million customers. It's not a surprise. And believe it or not, some water companies out there straddle a number of counties. We've got the luxury, I'll call it, of serving the county. So that in itself is fantastic. 2.5 or 2.2 million households, a significant amount of pipes in the ground, as you can imagine, which take management 24/7, 53,000 kilometres of sewer and 32,000 kilometres water pipes. In essence, and I guess what's become under scrutiny from customers, public and stakeholders and councillors like yourself is, are we delivering the right things for our customers and for the environment? But that's absolutely the company's ambition, and it's underpinned by what we call a thriving Yorkshire, right for customers and right for the environment. What you will see, and I call it the branding that's associated with the investment going forward, is something called Right for Scarborough. And we'll use that as a thread that runs through all the investment, because that's absolutely, you talked about place-based pride, and I've heard a number of colleagues talk about that today. That's absolutely the heart of the investment. It's not simply pouring concrete and building things. It's about understanding what that means to the people of Scarborough. When it says our network, so draw your eye to slide 3. Again, that just gives you a bit of detail of the sort of distances and size of pipes. Effectively, you have two separate networks. You have the sewerage network, which obviously takes waste away from your property, and you have the clean water net, which is about taking and providing safe, wholesome drinking water, both of which, rightly so, are heavily regulated and scrutinised. And that's by the regulators, that'd be the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the Environment Agency, obviously the economic regulators, Ofwat. There's also the Consumer Council for Water, which provides scrutiny and support for customers. I think the important thing to stress here, and I know it's obviously as the understandable level of scrutiny brought to programs like Dirty Business and the general feeling of public about water quality standards, expectations are higher than ever, rightly so, is something called a CSO. So forgive me if I'm patronising, you've heard about that term before, but it's worth asking that question. I see the councillor's got his hand up. Is that, apologies.
We'll wait till the end. Will you put your hand up for the end? Yes, right.
No problem, sorry. So combined sewer overflow. So effectively, as abhorrent as it sounds, that is an integral part of the combined sewerage system, which 60-70% of the UK's system is designed in that manner. It carries rainwater and foul sewage. So don't want to put anybody off their lunch at this time. But it's important to understand that they were there designed as what was just effectively a pressure relief on the system. And I guess historically, the decision was made back in Victorian times when they first put these overflow or relief valves in, for want of a better word. That was purely and simply to stop, from a public health point of view, believe it or not, backing up of sewage into properties, into streets, into businesses. And that was the rationale. But obviously that trade-off meant that there was environmental implications of doing that. And clearly, as everyone said, that is now unacceptable. And certainly the amount of spills across the nation from water companies' overflows is not acceptable. And that's been turned into, via the Environment Act, real tighter, more stringent standards to reduce that. And I'll come on to what that means on the coast for Scarborough as well, and why that investment is coming to make significant improvements. There is something called a live storm overflow map, and I'm hoping that's something that perhaps councillors will encourage when they meet with their customers, constituents, residents and other stakeholders. I'm very mindful we work closely with Surfers Against Sewage, clearly have a strong voice and rightly so to hold us to account. But there is an actual map on the Yorkshire Water website. I would really encourage you to use that map. I think last time I was here in March, we had some representation made about confidence around some of these monitors. Are they telling the right thing? We had a particular concern about an asset called Holbeck Hill, and I think it was one that was numerously reported on social media as spilling. And I know we'll talk about trust and transparency, and the very reason for these monitors is to provide that. And that, in fact, was a faulty instrument. So we've got to get that fixed. It was fixed, I'm pleased to say. I'm happy to give you a bit of detail about that as well. These monitors effectively sit in a large chamber. And in this instance at Holbeck Hill, believe it or not, historically you have what they call step irons, access irons into a chamber. And what we found, the engineers got into this, there's a particular large piece of protruding metal was interfering with the signal. As simple as that. Something as daft and as simple as that has caused, I guess, broke down trust, suggests the CSO spilling when it isn't. That's now been removed and remedied. But you have the assurance the committee will continue to monitor that and take the learning, of course, because that's a technical issue you can design out effectively. But that is just to give some reassurance that where we do pick up on issues like that, we will get them resolved. But I'm happy again through this committee to make sure we're held to account around those sort of things. But I would encourage you to please use the map. The one thing about the map as well is that where we do, and as with any moving part piece of equipment, if it has maintenance required on it, the way the map is set up, it will have a spanner symbol basically, which suggests it's under maintenance, it's being fixed. The regulations are such through the Environment Agency Ofwat, those instruments must be available over 95% of the time. They should be 100% available, but there's a tolerance in there for maintenance. So again, we're held to account to making sure those instruments do work. So things like Holbeck Hill, they need calling out, they've been addressed, but I'm glad that I can just share with you that has been remedied. And that's again about building that trust and making sure that when you look at data, when you look at this map, you've got the assurance that what it's telling you is correct. I'll draw your attention next to the next couple of slides. Pollution, something obviously that we don't want, nobody wants. Obviously where materials go into the environment and it shouldn't go into the environment. So there's a difference here between when I talked about a CSO, so that's where something may spill due to heavy rain and it's permitted by the agency. As abhorrent as that sounds, that is a legal action if it spills in wet weather, heavy rainfall. However, if something escapes from a network, a pump station, a treatment works or an asset, and it's not functioning as it should, that will be deemed as a pollution. And there's some stats in the donut symbol there. I don't intend to walk through them all, but there's an awful lot of work going on within our company and across all water companies, of course, to look at how we continue to improve the infrastructure, the resilience, and make sure those escapes are driven down and down. Again, we're held to account by the agency. No, previously you've had Martin Christmas and Mike Duggar at the committee. We meet with them regularly, but we also are obligated absolutely to report that. And that also implicates the water company in terms of its environmental performance assessment. So it's absolutely in the water company's interest to drive that down. The one message I would ask, please, for councillors to support us on, and I know you do already, is some of the causes of pollution, some of the causes is associated with material going into the sewer that shouldn't be there. And blockages, and there's a high proportion of blockages caused by wipes, caused by, believe it or not, where people almost using the sewer as a bit of a fly tip, you know, open the lid and throw things in. You wouldn't believe some of the things that have been found historically, and I know I don't want to put you off your lunch, but in all seriousness, the 3 Ps message is really important. So if you are talking to residents, groups and others, this idea of just pee, poo, paper is the message really that needs to go down there. The idea of wipes, other materials that are acceptable just aren't, and they do cause blockages. So we really welcome any support from the council you can give around that messaging. But that doesn't take the water company off the hook. We've got to make sure our assets are maintained, of course. So the statistics there are really around where it's come from, or when it's coming from pipes. A lot of the time it's down to blockages. We do the maintenance, but please, customers can help us as well. The slide further down is about spotting of pollution. This is where we really welcome the eyes and ears of everybody in the community, including Scarborough. And clearly we know the passion, rightly so, about how people feel about their coast, about their water courses, whether it be Scarborough Beck, P-Zone Beck, the actual North Sea itself. And the images in the slides have been circulated to members are really just an idea of the sorts of things that can be deemed a pollution, whether it's milky, cloudy water, whether it's in fact, some of the yucky stuff we don't want to see in there. It could well be an odour. And we're actively encouraging customers, members here, please do report it in. There are 2 avenues for that. There is a Yorkshire Water number that's included in the deck. And equally, I'm sure my EA colleagues would also want us to ring through to the incident line. Both numbers are absolutely valid. They'll be acted on. And again, we are held to account and make sure we respond. But again, it's in all our interest to make sure these things are reported. And in many instances, they may not be a water company asset, but again, to protect the environment, I would encourage everyone to please use those 2 dedicated numbers to report to anything you see, or perhaps any of your customers, residents do see. It's really, really important that we all remain vigilant. That's the only thing we can do. Apologies going at pace through this. Please do tell me to slow down if I'm going too quickly. And then draw your eye to the next slide is about AMP8 investment. Forgive me for some of the water company jargon. AMP8 is the 8th period of a 5 year since privatisation with 5 yearly funding cycles, and we're into AMP8 now. And it is by far, for the whole industry and in Yorkshire, the biggest level of investment, and I've been in the industry 25, 30 years, we've ever seen. That is really, really positive. Now, some of you may say, well, that's, too late. Some of this stuff should have happened many years ago. However, it's happening, and it's a fantastic, fantastic thing in terms of infrastructure. I talked about resilience, talked about spill reduction. And for Scarborough, from obviously my area of particular focus, I'm responsible for helping support bathing waters across Yorkshire. I'm really excited about this. And I'll go into a bit of detail a bit later on about it, as much as I can share with you for now. But as I said, I'm happy to come back for future sessions as it starts to grow arms and legs, this scheme. But I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity and significant amount, millions of pounds of investment into the infrastructure. But it's not just as I said, it's the infrastructure, it's what that brings to the town. And I know the comments that I made earlier on about how the town feels about sort of areas of deprivation, the infrastructure. I think this will be a fantastic catalyst for the town as well. The subsequent slide is that we've been very Scarborough-centric and very conscious. Firstly, it's Scarborough and Whitby, but equally, and I know last time we had questions about Whitby, the slide that says coastal programme gives you a flavour that not as well as the work in Scarborough. We've got our friends across the other county in East Riding, where there's significant investment going in Bridlington. But I guess just as importantly as assets or works that are on the ESC in Whitby. So you'll see a list of sites there. Mickleby, I heard Alison mention Mickleby before for another reason, but you can see some of our smaller sites out in rural communities. They're going to receive investment over this next 5 years, which again is fantastic. That investment is about reducing spills to the environment. As I said before, we know that's abhorrent. We know it's something that we don't want to have happen. As I said, it's been effectively a pressure relief on the system, but we know that we want to make it better. Not only that the investment is there, it's like putting your money where your mouth is. And there's legislation driving that, of course. So you're talking about, £300 million across a significant proportion of infrastructure in the north. I'm involved further inland as well in the likes of Knaresborough, where we're doing investment. But for Scarborough and Whitby, there is a significant amount of activity, which I'm really pleased to share with you. And as I said, there'll be further updates over the months and years ahead. The next slide is something that many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with because you live and breathe it, and rightly so. It's an absolute cornerstone of Scarborough. It's bathing waters itself. I've said that the Environment Act was introduced in 21. Quite rightly, that really holds water companies to account and says you need to sort out the spills and really reduce them. The exciting thing for Scarborough and some of our key coastal resorts and some of the inland designations is that we're looking to accelerate that investment. For bathing waters, what that means is that by 2035, as the Act says, you should have nothing spilling more than twice in a bathing season or less than 10 times across a year. Again, you may argue, well, that's still 10 times too much. But in terms of the nature of the history of frequency and volume of spills, that will be significantly reduced. And the investment we're putting in Scarborough, Bridlington and elsewhere means we want to achieve that earlier. We're trying to achieve some of these spill reduction targets by 2030. Again, you'll say, well, that's still too far off, but that is ahead of schedule. And the idea is, again, to bring you up to speed on a frequent basis where we're at with that programme. But that act in itself will significantly reduce the impact on the bathing water. I touch on the point at the bottom, and this isn't a water company spokesperson saying Sloper Shoals, nothing to do with me. We know we've got lots to do. The partnership approach is key. We work very closely with the agency. The agency, of course, the enforcement partner, but we do work with them because of the intelligence they've got around understanding where our environmental harm is. We work with North Yorkshire very closely, whether it's Andy Crossley on drainage, we work with colleagues in infrastructure. The only way we're going to achieve really excellent water quality is doing it together. And that's why I raise that in there as a partnership approach, that it's, yes, the water company needs to sort its act out, make sure we're doing our bit, but to truly get excellence, it's going to take a partnership approach. And I know we've got the commitment around the partnership already to succeed at that. This slide really again tells you what designated bathing water is. Again, forgive me if you do know this already or you're aware of it. It really means that designated water's got some very special regulations associated with it. It's not simply, oh, it's just like a river. It's just got a standard set of environmental parameters to meet. Not at all. It very much is monitored through the lens of public health. The standards to achieve for bathing water are set by the World Health Organization. I know there's further scrutiny being discussed with DEFRA and the EA at the moment about those standards. But the important thing to note for the likes of Scarborough North, Scarborough South, Whitby, Brunswick, etc., is that we are held to account. We are financially penalised as a water company as well through the economic regulator. And not only that, the reputational harm, of course, and the fact that we do not want to be harming the environment. We have 22 bathing locations, believe it or not now. So we have 18 on the coast. We had 3 inland until 3 weeks ago. And then the River Swale has just been recently designated in Richmond. So we were supportive of that. That is going to require some investment. And again, it'll take a partnership to make sure that water quality is to a high standard. The one area that we've all united on the partnership on is the element of public health and safety. Obviously, we had a lot of tragedy over the last couple of weeks, sadly, in the news. So we're very mindful of where that sits and that liability. We had that very discussion with Ofwat last week. But in terms of water quality, Yorkshire Water will be absolutely playing its part. And the regulations are such that we are held to account. Another slide really to talk about what I've just described there, that again, the regulations itself are a triangulation between the Environment Agency doing the regulation and sampling, the local authority support around the signage, and really around some of the public health elements of that and the facilitation. The water company are involved as that third wheel around making sure our assets are in good shape and good order. But as I've said, we know there are other actors, there are other things that we need to get right. But that's the sort of the trio of key players around the bathing water regulations. The slide there really just typifies, and I know we talked about it at the summit with Richard back in October last year. And I know many feel incredibly passionate about this. The slide just shows or details all the variety of things that can input and affect bathing water quality. Again, I stress this is not a water company spokesperson saying nothing to see here. That's absolutely not the fact. But we do know that there's many, many things that impact bathing water. And to get true excellent standards, we need to make sure we're tackling all those inputs. And it varies beach on beach, believe it or not, as well. So, I'm delighted to say that working in partnership, I'm confident we will get there. The one thing to call out for everyone's benefit, if you're not aware, is the way that bathing water is calculated is over 4 yearly rolling average. The logic in that, of course, is that you don't get one good year and everyone claps their hands and gets happy. It's got to be sustained improvement. So that's either through investment in infrastructure, changes in perhaps working practices, perhaps changes in a variety of different ways that show that sustained improvement. And that's how the bathing water quality standards are met. So we need to make sure that what water company does is enduring, what we do with whether it's agriculture, we work locally, obviously clearly closely with the council, whether it's drainage, other practices, we make sure that they are sustainable. I've heard referenced before that things like maintenance, that things are maintained. And if we can improve our practice, that's what we need to do. That just gives you a flavour visually of the sorts of things that can impact bathing water. And the reason we know that is the science is getting more and more sophisticated. Believe it or not, I'm aware of Professor Grock's work. We're aware of the work we did with Claire Campbell and the Environment Agency using DNA and things that 5-10 years ago I'd have no idea about. Incredible advances in science which help us get really quite forensic, but it's that level of detail we're now able to get into which I think will really help us with Scarborough and with other bathing waters around Yorkshire. So again, it's exciting and it allows us to really explore that innovative technology further and further. The next slide really just gives you a flavour of bathing water quality across North Yorkshire. Across the region, it was actually a good year. We did see 2 beaches improve. We just saw 1 drop. The 1 drop was at Reeton, and that went from excellent to good. There's no single reason. We're not aware of any particular asset deficiencies from a Yorkshire Water point of view. We are absolutely scrutinising Reeton this year. We did an awful lot of work with Haven a few years ago with some misconnected drains, with the Holiday Park there, with their their national drainage manager to make sure they were held to account as well, and that has improved dramatically. So we'll continue to work with private entities as well to make sure things are improving, and any inputs to Reeton Gill which can influence Reeton bathing water quality. Jumping around a little bit, but going back into the investment in Scarborough, as I said, you've got some eye-watering numbers in. Sometimes they're just numbers, Miles. What do they actually mean? As I said, there's a significant amount of investment, over 350 million across a number of sites. And I think the most exciting, as I say, for us is particularly in Scarborough, but I'm not ignoring the fact that particularly on the Esk and inland, as you saw on that previous slide, there's an awful lot of investment going to reduce those spills. This programme, by the way, is just a 5-year programme. We get into a period already now working with the regulators to look at the programme from 2030 beyond, and it's already looking like that programme will be even bigger again, which is great news. Ever mindful, the economic regulator will hold us to account in terms of customers' bills, of course, but in terms of investment, it's going to be another sizable programme. The idea for Scarborough, when we come here, we want to get it right. And I say a one and done. I know, again, there's trust and transparency about when you came here AMP5 and said that, Miles. How can we have the confidence you're going to do that again? But there is a high level of confidence we want to get this right. It's a great opportunity. This then allows me just to drive into a little bit more detail into Scarborough. So there's a small lozenge you can see with a sort of aerial view of Scarborough on there. We know, and briefly spoke with the council more before, some great investment at Wheatcroft. I know there's lots of challenges, obviously, that councillors clearly and rightly expressed at Yorkshire Water. That has shown that investment does work. We need to do more of it, but it's going to be a balance. So at Wheatcroft, we created a sizable storage tank, reduced those spills, and that has had a marked difference. We need more of the same, but we won't necessarily just be creating large tanks to come on to. We're doing other forms of dealing with the network and other solutions. But the idea of that plan there just gives you a flavour of the half a dozen assets we'll be focusing our attention on in Scarborough. The next few slides I'm just sharing with you are what we've actually used as part of our consultation. I think this is important, but hopefully that you'll really find of great interest. We're really, really mindful of coming to a town and suddenly turning up with diggers and cranes and no one knowing what's going on and not feeling like there's been any form of engagement or consultation. So starting in May, it may be sort of small baby steps. We started in the library and have had 6 sessions so far. And the material you can see in the slides there, sorry, I'm checking my phone because the slides keep disappearing, are examples of where we've used boards to start engaging with customers, with stakeholders, of the sorts of things will be part of the investment in Scarborough. So you see slide 1, we've got something called managing rainwater. So if you remember, we talked about at the top of this combined sewers and being at capacity and CSOs operating, which again we found abhorrent. If we can get rainwater out of the system and manage it in a different way, that takes stress off your infrastructure. We're not just simply piping it away. That might be a solution. But what we're suggesting here, and what was done through the Living with Water template in Hull, is you actually use rainwater, you create rainwater gardens, you create features, you create green spaces for people to use, and people take pride in their local area again. So again, one of the things that will be explored as part of the features of the scheme will be, where can we do this? Where can we separate, and where we can create those green spaces? Which is why I'm very keen that the consultation with the members here and the committee here is crucial to keep you up to speed, feel you involved, and can influence, perhaps give us some insight to where this would work. But that is certainly a key feature of the solution going forward. We've talked about increasing treatment capacity. So if you think about the infrastructure and reducing those spills, someone say, oh, it's got to go somewhere, Miles, where are you going to put it? So you've got a number of options. As I said, you take the surface water out, the rainwater, which effectively you're pumping and treating as a cost to us all. Do you need to do that? Can you use it and treat it as a resource? If you have to keep it in the pipes, does that mean pushing more forward for treatment? If you're doing that, you have to look at the size of your facilities. Everyone's familiar, obviously, the works up at Burniston at Scarborough Works, put in many, many years ago as part of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, has worked well. You may have a view on that, but it has worked well. However, to continue to put flow up there, you'll need to increase the size of it. The slide in there just gives you all the visual in there, gives you an idea of some of the novel methods or technology that will be explored. And this isn't a given, this is something as part of the consultation. So in there you've got a unit called an aerofac. Sounds very grand, doesn't it? Effectively, it's a very large area, and you'll say that sounds horrible. It sounds like a lake of poo. It's a lake of treated sewage, but effectively natural UV disinfection, low energy, low carbon, can treat sewage to a very, very high standard. It's been used across Europe and internationally. It's something that will be explored. But again, it's done in consultation to bring people along with Yorkshire Water. Is that the right thing to do? Why is it the right thing to do? But it's something that's being explored. And again, when we're talking to customers, stakeholders, this is about being open and upfront and transparent. The one thing about that technology, of course, is it's uses quite a lot of a land bank. So if you're looking at land, Dutchy land as an example, upon where the site is currently, that's quite a chunk of land. So there are all the considerations around planning, etc., would be a feature of that. But at least it gives you a flavour of the sorts of things that are up for consideration. It'll come as no surprise, the next one's tunnels. Think, oh wow, if everyone's familiar with the Thames Tideway tunnel in London, significant investment there. It's a not dissimilar approach. So you go deep under the ground, and two things. It's an ability to transfer effectively waste to a destination. It's also a way and means of holding and storing it. So you can have very large upsized tunnels which can hold the material, and that's something that we're part of a consideration for this solution in Scarborough. But again, we have to reassure people, if you're doing drilling, tunneling, what does that mean to us? That sounds very scary. So the whole idea is, if we're going to do that, we're front into it, we get the feedback from everybody. How do we feel about that? Where will it happen? Where will it be? But I believe that tunneling will be a feature or certainly an element of what we may be doing in Scarborough. So it's just being upfront that could be an option. The image you've got there is actually in Ilkley. So you say that's not a coastal place, but it has got a designation. It was the first inland designation in the UK. As part of that, that's just been commissioned in March and April, and that has to meet some very stringent standards akin to what we just talked about for Scarborough. In fact, inland designations is one spill per season on a river. That tunnel is an image of an upsized sewer and tunnel in Ilkley that was built. So we know we can do it, and we can do it in time. As long as you bring people along with you and people understand why you're doing it. So it's just to understand that a tunnel is a potential option in Scarborough as part of the investment plan. Last but not least, then I'll talk a bit more about the consultation, and Chair, please tell me if I'm over time. You see the image there is a large tank, which sounds very grand, doesn't it? It looks a bit grotesque. I know Councillor Moore's just left the room, but Wheatcroft is an example where we put tanks in there. These tanks, once they look the big open excavation, but once done, they can very much be landscaped and covered, and you wouldn't know they were there. However, they can be quite disruptive when they're being built. So we have to be open and upfront about that. If you're going to build tunnels, if you're going to create storage, what does that mean for the town? What does that mean for roads, highways, byways, access? So part of the consultation is to explore that. This could be a feature associated with the scheme. How do people feel about that? Might want to see what an artist's impression looks like. That will be all part of the consultation. Believe it or not, this tank and the image you can see there is a 17,500 metre cube tank. I mean, it's eye-watering how much that can hold. The purpose being it stops spills to the environment, and then once the rain's abated, it takes it back through for treatment. So it works very, very well. So I'm pleased to say that came online. I was there last week actually with Ofwat. I came online last month. The key thing, I'll put my glasses back on, is consultation. And I said before, it's sort of baby steps initially, and I know that we are really, really passionate and keen to do this with your endorsement, of course. So we've had 6 consultation events so far. They've all been in the library during the day, and I know that's been questioned about the timing. Obviously, a lot of people work, like we all do. Look, I'll come on to that in a minute about just broadening that window. We also attended the Big Ideas by the Sea event, which was fantastically attended. I mean, The weather was, as everyone probably knows, was superb, absolutely superb. In fact, one of my guys in my team did get a little bit sunburned, so I had to tell him off for not wearing his sun cream. We've also had some drop-in events at the Sea Life Centre, and thanks to the Sea Life Centre for hosting us. I guess the point here is that we're trying to use facilities, locations at the heart of the community. We've used a platform called Commonplace, which I believe the council already used for consultation. It's the first time Yorkshire Water's adopted that, but it's been a fantastic tool for customers to engage with us, to tell us how they feel about what we're proposing, how they feel about water quality, how they feel about the community, how they feel about some of the features we've talked about here, the tunnels, the aerofac, and also, more importantly, is where their real concerns are from a disruption point of view. What does it mean for my bins during the week? Does it mean my road's going to be closed? What does it mean for blue light emergency? What does it mean for the foreshore road? Is that going to be closed during high season? So we're capturing that feedback. You can see in the stats there, and these are to be further updated. We saw about circa 4,000 customers over this drop-in period, and nearly 1,000 have already actively shared their views, which is fantastic. That's going to continue, of course, and they will be a feature and factor into how we shape the investment. And again, at this committee, happy to share that as that moves on. But it's been a real team effort, and the consultation continues. So I think the final thing to say about what else we're doing in the window is that we've got another session on the 11th of June in the library, which is 4 till 7, so slightly outside the hopefully accommodate those that do work and drop in. And then we're using the Street Community Centre on the 15th of June, 4 while 7. Another session will be hosted by my team with boards, people who can speak eloquently and detailed about where we are with the scheme. Also, we have other colleagues there who can talk about their bills, give them support. Maybe it's someone who needs to look at social tariffs. So it's not just about the scheme. The focus for me was about the team being present in Scarborough. We've been talked about a number of times about being transparent and being visible. That's the essence of what I want to convey, is that we need to make sure we are visible, we're held to account, but we can give you those answers, hopefully, in the time allowed during these consultation events. So yeah, the final couple of slides is the consultation continues. This consultation phase will run to the end of June, and there's an online access as well, and that's not for everybody, but it is there because not everybody can get down to a drop-in centre. And I guess the takeaways are, water quality we know is complex. We've got our work to do, and we've got to step up to the mark, which I know, as everyone will agree, is the right thing for Yorkshire Water. Reducing storm overload is clearly a priority for Yorkshire Water. The act says we have to do it, we will do it, but it's more than that. It's about how we make sure that we get trust from customers in Scarborough. And the investment is significant, and we want to get it right. So if we're going to start to replumb Scarborough, for a better word, we want to make sure we get it right. The bottom side is just some contact numbers that we are more than welcome to as touch points for yourselves. Any queries, questions you have, both myself and Kelly from the Corporate Affairs team and my partnerships team, more than happy to remain a good point of contact for members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we really appreciate your time in preparing and circulating this in advance and the whiz through. It's good to draw our attention to key issues. I've got a number of questions, but I'm going to ask the stinker one first, and I have warned you, and you've talked a lot about it as you've gone through it. But frankly, given the poor performance of our bathing water quality, given the issues we've had not too long ago about spills, how are you going to build trust in this community, and how are you going to demonstrate Yorkshire Water's commitment to fixing what it can fix? I accept not everything's your problem, but how are you going to do that?
Yeah, I obviously agree, Chair. And trust is easily lost and hard gained, isn't it? That's the classic, isn't it? You're absolutely right. I think the first thing, as I said, is about transparency and visibility. So hopefully committees like this, having representation, not just a spokesperson, and generally committed, as are my team, to come and talk, not just yourselves, have those difficult conversations with residents who are unhappy with Yorkshire Water. We must front into that. So the first thing is about visibility. I guess it's put your money where your mouth is. So it's the investment itself to say, it's not just paying lip service. Show me that you're going to make a difference. So the part of the consultation, those plans to bring people along. And I guess when things do go wrong, because stuff does go wrong, let's not sugarcoat it. I guess to make sure that we share when things go wrong and explain why it's gone wrong and what we've done to fix it. They're the classics. That's what I'd expect from a water company. That's what I expect from our council. That's what I expect from most agencies. So I think, to your point, Chair, I think we acknowledge that. And that's part of my job, is to make sure that we're held to account, but equally we're answerable and we can answer credibly and authentically. But we know it's going to take time. And I think that if we keep running away and not giving answers, that degrades trust. So the purpose of being here and going forward will be exactly that, to rebuild trust.
Thank you. And we will hold you to account on that.
Absolutely will.
And exactly on the issue you said, things do go wrong. Alison, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Miles, for your presentation, and also thank you for hosting me and Councillor Colling at the recent visit to Whitby Road Bridge pumping station at Scarborough Mills. As you'll be aware, one of my roles is to hold Yorkshire Water to account, as I do on numerous occasions on various incidents. You talk about transparency and visibility and sharing when things go wrong. However, there were 2 pollution incidents at Scarborough Mills pumping station in May due to technological failures. Now, I acted quickly to secure a meeting with Yorkshire Water to understand what had happened, and also to understand why my constituents were not informed straight away. The answer from Yorkshire Water is that you inform stakeholders, including the Environment Agency and North Yorkshire Council, but the public didn't know about these pollution incidents. So if you are wanting to be transparent, shouldn't you just be going directly to the public and informing us about pollution incidents, which you know you will be investigated and fined for? Thank you.
Thanks, Alison, for the question, and I appreciate your time when we hosted you the other week. You're absolutely right. There's always a fine line, isn't it, of making sure that we don't scare the public and something until we have all the facts. But you're right in terms of engaging with yourself and the councillors when we have an incident. I think we've got some work to do there. We do have a system of engaging with stakeholders, as you said, and that includes obviously the Environment Agency as the key regulator. I think there's more work to be done on who we include in that engagement. That includes other key stakeholders like Surface Against Sewage. Again, we've been taking to their central function down in St Agnes in Cornwall about how can we, again, improve trust and transparency. So I'm happy on Alison's question to take away and confirm and come back with quite a robust plan of who we do engage when we indeed have an incident or event. Hopefully we don't. What we want to do is provide some reassurance and take that as an action.
Thank you. Yeah, I am concerned that one of the reasons we weren't aware of it, the public wasn't aware of it, was that it was outside the bathing season. So I need to make sure that we capture that. It doesn't matter what time of year it is, we do want to be informed about it, because as you know, our surfers are in there in weather that frankly I wouldn't go out in, but there you go.
I concur, Chair. That's absolutely acknowledged, and we'll pick that up.
Thank you. I've got one more before I open it to the floor. The assets aren't manned. I absolutely understand why. I understand the issue at Scarborough Mills. You've talked about Holbeck Hill. So what is the inspection regime, and does it vary depending on the asset, and what visibility do you have of problems?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You're absolutely right. Not all assets are manned, and nor do we expect them to be. I guess if there's effectively a hole and a weir in a road, it doesn't warrant sort of daily attendance. Somewhere like Scarborough Works, the large works, absolutely is manned daily. It's a requirement. Although you have automatic equipment, it absolutely is manned. And equally, somewhere like Scarborough Mills, those large stations, they are visited daily. Although they're monitored through what we call SCADA, sort of remote systems, they are visited daily. Smaller assets like the combines for overflows, depends on their complexity. As you said, it's nuanced based on the nature of the asset. There are always a minimum, a very small overflow, for example, get a monthly inspection, but it'll be monitored daily through our central control function. So any spills or alerts, absolutely. But then you have a level of maintenance. You have someone who inspects the asset itself. That might be the outfall if it's going to a beach. Some of the assets, as you can bet, are in highways and byways, and that's not easy. That requires traffic management. So if it's a CSO in a highway, we work very close with the council, say, look, we need to close a lane to get into this asset. Unfortunately, some of these things were designed before we had 3 lanes of highway. That'll be done in advance. That'll be planned. So it does vary on the size and nature and complexity of the asset. Somewhere like Scarborough Mills, Tollhouse, and Scarborough Works will get a daily visit from an operative as well as remote reach out. And that technology allows for 24/7 monitoring. So the vast majority of our assets, perhaps other than the very, very small works, have got some form of what we call telemetry, remote reach out visibility that can be looked at from a device or a laptop. So technology's moved on to pick up on those alerts. In terms of maintenance, yeah, those large sites attended daily, that can be cleaning something out without going into the detail, or could be fixing something, or if it's a mechanical, electrical, greasing, lubricating, etc. There'll be a round or a schedule of work, and that will vary depending on the apparatus or the appliance from daily through to, I think, probably 6 monthly for some pieces of apparatus, but everything has a plan. And what I can reassure members is I was literally pulling a slide together yesterday for our executive around this very topic. So right at the top of the company, there are questions around maintenance performance, hitting your statutory dates. When are you maintaining that asset? Have you got work that's overdue? So that is tracked and monitored as an organisation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I won't hog it all because I do have some more. But however, Councillor Swanwick.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. I haven't so far engaged as a priority in the bathing quality on the beaches issues, largely because Whitby is designated as excellent and has been for a number of years. And I'm very pleased, and I want to make sure we keep it that way. Though I do share the concerns of my Scarborough colleagues who understandably want to bring their beaches up to the same sort of standard as Whitby. I'm very grateful for the material that you circulated in advance, in particular the storm overflow map, which I hadn't seen before, and it is very interesting in relation to Whitby in two ways. Firstly, in terms of the storm discharges into the Esk, this is clearly a regular occurrence, and in some cases for quite lengthy periods. For example, just picking one out, Gromont wastewater treatment works storm discharge continued for 26 hours. Now that's potentially quite a lot of material getting into the Esk. Now why be concerned about the Esk, especially upstream like that? It's because further downstream in Slights is where as I understand it, the drinking water for Whitby is extracted. And that must be quite a high volume of water, especially in the summer periods when the town is full of visitors. And so that is a major concern if there is pollution further upstream getting down to where it's extracted. I do understand that it also comes from other parts of the area, but nonetheless, my understanding is the majority of the water for Whitby comes out of the Esk at Slights. Maybe you can say something about that. But further down, and one of the sites that is highlighted as even having a very recent storm discharge is Endeavour Wharf. Now, Endeavour Wharf is in the middle of the town, for those that don't know it, and it has a historic importance because I believe that the sewage from the town was originally collected at Endeavour Wharf in tanks under the underground there. But then in more recent, and I may be saying in the next 30 years, facilities were put in to pump the sewage up to the Broomfield Farm sewage treatment works, which is where it goes now. Now, there's two aspects to that. One is Endeavour Wharf is right in the harbour, and I have asked the question about it's great having the beaches clean, but what about the harbour? Because the harbour is used by an increasing number of people for activities which get them into contact with the water. And I'm thinking of East Barnby Outdoor Centre, who bring their children down there, all with their nice little high-vis jackets and canoes, and they go out and have a great time. But I'm sure some of them get splashed and get wet in the process, which is probably what they want to happen anyway. There's also paddle boarders and people on various craft in the harbour. And that clearly, if the harbour is being polluted by the storm discharge from the Endeavour Wharf tanks, then that is something of concern. But further than that, I'm sorry, slightly long, Chair, the Broomfield Farm Sewage Treatment Works, which receives the sewage from the town, is subject to continuous complaints from those who have bought houses on what was previously Northwest Water, sorry, not Northwest Water, Yorkshire, whatever it was called, the Water Board, the land that was owned by the Water Board and subsequently was sold off with the privatisation. On that land, Barrett's and other developers have built large numbers of new properties, and they are close to the sewage treatment works on the Broomfield Farm development. Building is still going on there, and a new part of that development is yet to open up, which is an area of, I think, about 50 properties to be built by Brearley Homes, and people will be moving into even closer to the sewage treatment works there. But the residents on the estate are in touch with me on a very regular basis, saying the smells from the sewage treatment works are appalling at times, and that has been endorsed, in fact, by the builders who are working on contractors who are working on the new houses being built on the estate, where in some cases the chaps who are sitting in the cabin won't go out of the cabin because the smell's too bad for them to work. Now, that doesn't seem to be met with any kind of positive response from Yorkshire Water. And I know my constituent is in touch with somebody who she's been given as their contact, somebody called Will, who won't give a surname, so I can't give you any more information. But Will keeps her in touch with what's going on and supposedly listens to what she says. But in fact, there's been no change over the time that she's had. She bought a house on the understanding this problem had been solved. It clearly hasn't. And that is connected with Endeavour Wharf. And the latest information that she's had from Will is that the sewage is now being doused at the Endeavour Wharf site before it's pumped up in order to reduce the smell at the sewage treatment works at Broomfield Farm. So, that is not a very satisfactory situation. Now, I'm sure you haven't discussed this previously about Whitby, but I just want to put that into the pot.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm happy to step through those if I can. I'll do my best.
Yep.
So just on the slides and the Gromont query, Councillor. First thing on that slide, Gromonts will get investment. So in terms of the question around spill reduction, that's absolutely in the crosshairs of getting investments. If there's been excess spills or high spilling assets, that will get investment this AMP. We can keep you appraised of that investment. So that's point one. In terms of the water abstracts, I'm not au fait with that, but I'll take the action away again to just check on how the area is serviced. Is it extracted from that point? Is there any risk? Any water quality abstraction and subsequent treatment is subject to incredibly stringent standards. So I'd be confident there is no risk, but to reassure you and residents, customers, let's make sure we're taking action just to confirm that's the case and there is no risk. So I'll take that action away. But for Gromont itself, I'll take it in good faith, the data you've given me. I do know that Gromont is part of the investment plan, this AMP, which will reduce spills, as you just suggested there. So that's Gromont on slides. Endeavour Wharf, I am familiar with the councillor's query there. Very similar to Scarborough Mills and Scarborough. In fact, when we had the Coast Care investment many years ago, you're absolutely quite right, that the idea is to build a large pumping station, collect all that waste sewage and pump it up effectively up to Stainsacre Lane, up to Whitby Works. Absolutely designed to do that. There is no overflow for that. There's not a combined sewer overflow. The only spill you should ever get, or should never get, is if the pump station was to fail. So there's no CSO, talked about the relief valve. There's no CSO at Endeavour Wharf. So there should be no spills going into the harbour associated with that asset that pumps up to the works. I do know it's a very large, deep station. The point the council makes about odour, I'll come on to. What they'll be referring to is something called Nutriox or Taytec. It's a particular chemical that deals with septicity and that eggy hydrogen sulphur smell that people really associate with sewage. Not very nice, but we do have products to mitigate that. Sometimes you get septicity where material comes down the sewer network, can sit in a pumping station. You can put you off your lunch now. that can be dosed, and that does eliminate some of the odours the council described. So that's probably what Will is referencing. So that's part one. It also deals with it makes it easier to treat at the works. I am aware of the land sale. It's unfortunate in a way. I guess sewage works to some extent, there's ought to be some level of odour. However, it's obviously not acceptable someone who's living adjacent to a sewage works. I'll take an action just to understand where we are with the odour complaints. It sounds like, and there's contact. If you've not got a satisfactory response, we'll take that away. Whitby itself isn't due for any major investment. The performance, as I understand it, is good. There's nothing there, but if clearly there's an odour issue, we'll pick that up and make sure that the dosing that's done at Endeavour is sustained. It sounds like that's been reinstigated, so we'll understand why that is. And again, I'll pick that action up. Just in reference to harbour swimming, I do talk to colleagues in North Yorkshire about this. Obviously, the harbour is not a designated bathing point, and I do know, speaking to North Yorkshire colleagues, I can't speak on behalf of them, that there are safety concerns about people who do use the harbour for recreation, of course. So that is a concern. So I'd be very mindful of that, but that's not my place to comment. But the bathing beach, to Councillor's point, at Whitby, very much is excellent. That doesn't mean we rest on our laurels. We know we've got assets in Whitby that we need to keep an eye on, not just Endeavour Wharf. We did reduce spills from our CSR on Esplanade, North Terrace, a couple of years ago. That diverted surface water away, reduced spills, which is great, but that is still closely monitored. So we're very aware of that. Absolutely right, we want to maintain excellent at Whitby, but there are no assets, to my knowledge, that spill directly into the harbour. We did have conversations with my colleague Andy Crossley about dredging and activities in the harbour. Could that have any influence? But the EA and North Yorkshire, when the advice was that there is a limited interaction with the bathing water quality, but it is something to consider going forward.
Thank you. Neil, did you want to come back?
Very briefly, because we've repeated twice, there is nothing that spills into the harbour. I'm just picking up from your map, which has the various points in the system where there have been discharges, and I'm looking at Endeavour Wharf combined sewer overflow, which you tell me doesn't exist, which operates into the River-esque tidal, i.e. into the harbour, and that last discharged on the 24th of March 2026, and it ran for an hour and 6 minutes. So I think there's questions to be asked about the quality of the water in the harbour if it's being used for recreational purposes, as I've said previously.
Sorry, Neil, are you in the storm overflow map? Is that where you're looking?
Yeah.
It's that, councillor. It's my understanding that there wasn't any, but I will follow that through, make sure we come back to you with a sufficient response. I would say, though, again, because it's not a designated bathing location, it doesn't have the same standards applied. However, if there is an overflow, it should only operate against its permitted conditions. But I'll make sure I get that in writing to councillor as well.
Great, thank you very much. Rich.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd just like to say that residents are grateful for the investment at Wheatcroft and for Yorkshire Water's involvement with the community there. The pump station there used to emit a foul odour, and I used to get regular complaints from Cornelian Drive residents, but that's finished now. So that's my positive for you, Miles. I think what I want to say is you've mentioned today that partnerships are key. Well, many residents are asking how confidence in our bathing water partnerships can be rebuilt when leadership positions are being filled by people whose environmental voting records are themselves the subject of controversy. And of course, I'm talking about the recent appointment of Robert Goodwill as the chair of the Bathing Water Partnership. At a recent Surfers Against Sewage paddle out, I mentioned his appointment to spontaneous boos and jeers. So I understand that Yorkshire Water are trying to restore public trust and convince people that improving water quality is generally a top priority. But appointments such as this, are they really helping? That's question one. Only one more. You mentioned Professor Grock. His study firmly points through his nitrate study at human sewage contrary actually to the Environment Agency testing, which gave equivalent to seabird guano. I'd just like to put on record there, because that was brought up at the area committee's special meeting for water quality, and I don't think members possibly quite understood the significance of the professor's study, which is supposed to and is to complement the EA, but they were pointing to two very different factors. People, residents will know that I'm helping with a pilot study for citizen science, and it is a rapid testing technology. So if a rapid testing technology can identify elevated bacterial risk within minutes, it's 13 minutes, whereas official results may take days to be published. Should regulators and water companies be exploring how such technology could complement existing monitoring to provide more timely public health warnings? At the moment, the EA are testing 20 times throughout the season, and we get the results 3 or 4 days later. Well, people don't swim 3 or 4 days ago, they swim today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for the feedback about Wheatcroft. As I said, I'm hoping that is testing what we can do in the town when we invest in infrastructure. But I take your points about. I'll try and work through them. I think the first one was the appointment of Sir Robert Goodwill. So I absolutely acknowledge that as being somewhat controversial, particularly in Scarborough and Whitby, with Sir Robert's heritage as an MP for this town. That appointment followed a due diligence through the partnership, and was seen as an appointment after a process of identifying somebody who had the relevant level of experience and acumen to chair a partnership and truly act independently. Again, you may have a view on that. I appreciate that. However, what Sir Robert does and says is his voice. He's appointed on the basis that he should now be engaging, and to Councillor Moore's point, we have been key from the get-go. It should be a much wider and more inclusive partnership, not just the agencies, which I know everyone feels there is a lack of trust and transparency. Part of Sir Robert's role should also and will be to establish a stakeholder group, a true stakeholder group with all water users, and that in itself should have an independent voice and be led that way. And I do know that that is something that he will specifically drive for and will be doing. But I acknowledge that it hasn't been received by all particularly favourably. It is a finite role in the sense that it will be continued to be assessed on its validity and fitness for purpose. But as Councillor Moore does acknowledge, it is an attempt to provide some form of leadership, steerage at a very senior level, rather than having one of the agencies lead it. And that was the rationale. But I guess the proof will be in the pudding, and again, will be held to account based on the outcome of that. So I do acknowledge that, Councillor. Thank you. Regarding the Professor Grock and EA investigation, they aren't quite as combative as it sounds. I do appreciate you saying this challenge around seabirds. What speaks to my colleague Martin Christmas and Claire, obviously were instrumental in producing the report, and it was funded by ourselves, McCain's and others, rightly so, to get a really detailed forensic study. You do find that there are some locations that EA sampled that Professor Darren Grock didn't, and that's not a challenge about Professor Grock's work. So when you look at the seabird link, some of the sites located on the beach and elsewhere where birds were inhabited weren't where Professor Grock sampled, and I know that Martin has responded on that basis. There is a lot of things that do concur in that report, and to Councillor Moore's point out human factor, that's undeniable. There is definitely human waste, whether it's come from a Yorkshire Water asset or a private asset. That's not in denial. That's agreed. We do, as I said, it's a complex picture where you do have seabirds, where you do have other living things. It does have a bearing on it, which is why I will continue to labour that everybody needs to play their part, including the water company, of course. But I do acknowledge that it's come across as very combative and conflictory, but I actually don't think it's quite as stark as that.
Can I just add to that? The DNA samples didn't go to volume, didn't speak to volume. They only spoke to the presence of not the amount of presence of. I think that's relevant.
Absolutely, Chair. That's a really good point. One of the things, and I'm happy to share this as this technology moves on. I said that the technology is advancing rapidly, and I'll come on to the testing that Councillor raised. We're talking with York University at the moment about the ability, to Chair's point, around apportionment. I think when Martin Crystal EA was here, he was talking about its signals. You've got different types of DNA bacteria, which is great, but it doesn't give apportionment. There is technology potentially out there, I don't claim to be an expert in this field, that does start to look at apportionment. So when that technology, and if and when this next year, again, I'll be happy to share with the direction of travel, maybe get an expert along to share with the members around where we're going that, because that's absolutely the next holy grail to get to, which really gets that level of detail about apportionment. I think, bear with me, just check my notes. Thank you. Rapid testing. Thank you, Councillor. Rapid testing. This is the holy grail. So the units that I know councillors using, the BactiQuick tests, are a very effective, indicative way of getting it, and we absolutely support those. They're being tested nationally or even internationally. In fact, the Seagrown trial we're doing in the North Sea, we're using the same device to give us indication of the effectiveness of these ocean health units, and we can do an update that at a subsequent committee. We've actually got another trial with a firm called Unif AI, and that has got 20 monitors. You might have seen it on BBC. I was thrown out there for my sins a few weeks ago. And that is a monitor that's going we've got a monitor in Scarborough, and the idea of that is it looks at water quality parameters, pH, conductivity, all these fantastic things we measure. And then we take bacteriological samples, as councillors describe, which take days to process. And ultimately, the idea is to get a tool or a way of reconciling this data with the bacterial data, and you end up getting that on your phone. That is where we're trying to head to go, the industry, the Environment Agency, exactly to Councillor's point, because this 4 or 5 day lag is not helpful to anyone. It's telling you what the water was like 5 days ago. It's because that was the technology. It was all based on science 25, 30 years ago, growing on a Petri dish. So I agree. There is an awful lot going on in that space. There are some good things on the market. There are some not so good things. You can imagine it's a space where lots of innovators know that it's an area to that's very attractive for all water users. So again, we've got a number of trials. We'll keep this committee appraised of that and the work we're doing. It's a very exciting space, but recognise Councillor's point that really you want something that gives you near or real-time water quality information.
And that's the EA's problem, isn't it? There are lots of different tests available. Some are more effective than others, and they cannot shift from where they are until they are assured of the quality and robustness and reliability of the tests.
That's correct, Chair. That's the sort of dichotomy, but there is a move. My conversation with Martin Christmas are very positive in the sense he recognises that, but you're right, that's the challenge they've got currently. Yeah.
Thank you. We are technically out of time. I'm assuming everyone wants to eat into their lunch breaks because this is really important, and clearly goals are really important. And we've got Tim and Vicky sat very patiently at the back, but I saw Tim taking notes, so that you've obviously said something that made him take a note. So I've got David Jeffels and Eric Broadbent. David.
Just briefly, Madam Chairman, a good report by and large, I think. It's obviously one that we're going to have to constantly monitor. But I think it is encouraging, because pollution of our bathing waters has been an issue in Scarborough for decades. So I do welcome that. On a more local issue, I'm particularly concerned about odour problems. I know you did mention briefly about that, but in my in one of the villages in my division at West Ayton, we have a very long-running and serious problem of odours, which I will happily feed you in with correspondence to put you in the picture, Mouse. So thank you very much.
That's fine, Councillor. Please do share that with me, and between myself and Kelly, we can have a look into that. No problem.
Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Mal, you've sort of touched on a couple of points, really. I mean, social media last week, the bank holiday, surface against sewage. They had this machine, everybody was watching it, I'm sure, there was partly on television as well. Green lights, safe to go in the sea. I drove around following day, South Bay, round the Marine Drive. There was lots of water activity. So how do you deal with these mixed messages that there's a sign on the beach saying, don't go in, your phones are telling you to go in, I picture the public out there. Second point, Professor Crockett mentioned, and you've mentioned Scarborough Mills having monitors. He said that was the hot spot at the last meeting. Are there any more developments going on around the Scarborough Mills area? We have sufficient quality in the North Bay. Want to at least keep that, don't we? So just those 2 points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, couldn't agree more. So the first around the public confusion, I think that is a role for the partnership. I absolutely agree. That's exactly the sort of conversation I want to have with the board of that partnership, to say we need to be clear on our messaging. There is a need to build up trust. If we're going to monitor, as Chair referenced, there is a challenge around the lag associated with the in-season sampling, the provision of data. The regulations are really clear on what you should do if you have a poor water quality, or what they call a PRF, a pollution risk forecast, and it's incumbent on the local authority to then put signs out. But I take your point. You've got this challenge between actually the day of when the sample's taken, 50 metres down the track, you use this instrument, it says it's green. It's a very challenging space. I haven't got the answer per se, other than there's a recognition that the regulation they stand now, perhaps they meet the needs of future water users. I think that's a broader national conversation that's being had. All we can say is that we will support, and perhaps through the partnership, technology, using the likes of Scarborough as an innovator with the investment we're doing. I think there's an opportunity with the work Council was doing with the citizen science groups, bringing people in, making sure we're all collectively sharing that data will be helpful. But I absolutely take on board your point around it can be very confusing for something as simple as that. Is it safe to swim or not? It can be. At the moment, we rely on people using the SwimForce site. That is where you direct customers, of course. That's the public health. That's where the guidance comes from, I should say, the government website. And that's what we have to do at the moment. But I acknowledge your point. The second point was Scarborough Beck, I believe, Councillor, wasn't it? So a couple of things within Yorkshire Water, we do have some assets that discharge to Scarborough Beck. Let's not beat around the bush. We know that Scarborough Beck is a contributor to water quality in North Bay, particularly, albeit both Professor Grock and the EA investigation, there are other, I guess, call it actors in the frame. But as far as Scarborough Beck, I created what we called a hit squad pre-season, which was making sure that all Yorkshire Water's assets are in good shape, that they are fit for purpose, all the maintenance that Chair referred to is being done, they are cleansed. And I'll be very honest with you, we removed 32 tonnes of sand and silt out of the sewer up to Whitby Road Bridge pre-season, which just shows what can happen. And actively I'm pursuing that to make sure that is a regular cleansing activity to make sure the capacity is maximised. We will continue to monitor the water quality in Scarborough Beck. That is part of that 2-year trial, and associated with that, the idea is to share that data as well to make sure it's visible so we can work. And I've eagerly committed to share that with Steve from Surfacing and Sewage as well. So again, this trust and transparency piece, but I acknowledge that we've got to make sure our assets are in order, and then as part of the investment that they get looked at as well in terms of resilience. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's true there have been misconnections up Scarborough Beck in the same way there have been up Peasholm Glen, isn't there?
Absolutely correct, Chair. Thank you for reminding me of that. Actually, we are doing some work. In fact, we've just commissioned lanes from a drainage contractor. There were potentially up to 20 misconnections identified. Some of the new build housing estate up there, and some of some older properties. And that exercise is ongoing as we speak. A package of work I've just signed off in this last week to attend and make sure they're tackled. Also, everything and no stone unturned effectively. Yeah.
Thank you. That concludes our questions. I just need to say thank you for coming. You talked about putting us off the lunch. I'm not worried if I put them off the lunch. I've seen photos of disgusting fatbergs. They're usually from London, aren't they? None of us want to be there. So what public campaign are you going to do about your 3 Ps?
So there is an ongoing campaign. There's some branding across all the water and sewerage companies nationally, which is the 3 Ps. We do have a Bin It, Don't Block It campaign. And in fact, recently, particularly with the camping and caravan sites, we've used that to good effect. You've certainly got visitors, small diameter pipe work, people putting all sorts of things down toilets and into urinals. So we have materials already. And again, as part of the drop-in events and sessions, it wouldn't be just about the investment. We can continue to promote that. And again, if there's materials that we can provide through to councillors, again, we're happy to do that if you would help us a bit of a vehicle to continue to promote the message. We do have resources and collateral to support that campaign for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. And final comment for me. we start to build trust by things like this, and this is, I know you're regular. I'm going to ask you how regularly you want to attend the committee, because the consultations are going live now. You're talking about your plans. I've just been confirmed from St John that our next meeting is the 30th of September. Is that too soon to come back with any emerging plans? Because I've seen the sites. Neil wants Gromont doing first. So is that too soon? Will you have something to share by then?
I think it's suitable to come back then, even update on the consultation. I think by that stage, we should have a much more crystallised view how things are shaping up. Obviously, we'll have consultation discussions outside this forum as appropriate. But yeah, I'm happy to come back in September myself and Adam or a colleague and update you where we're at with things. No problem at all.
Brilliant. We'll book you in. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you,
Thank you, Kelly. And we'll see you in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Vicky and Tim, would you like to come to the front where it says presenting officers? And can I use that brief time to go through? Right, colleagues, shall we make a start again? We're completely off time and off script. I'll just check with St John. Can Paul Romans come up once?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so this is your lunch break. Vicky and Tim said they're not offended if some of you are still chewing while they are speaking. Please do not be chewing when you ask a question.
No, maybe not.
Okay, we are ready to go. So it's really easy when you know someone, but not to give them their official title. So welcome to Vicky Flowers, Head of Environment Protection, and Tim Crook, Divisional Officer for Environmental Health. Is that the first time you've been to the area committee? Well, hope it won't be the last. And Tim, we know. So. Oh, thank you very much. I'll leave you to decide how you best want to talk to us, and then we'll open up for questions.
Oh yeah, sorry. We're going to be fairly brief. You'll be happy to know, and obviously happy to take questions and suggestions at the end. So, sorry. I'm not great with microphones. I should be, but anyway, is that better? All right, thank you. Okay, so just a tiny bit of background. Then Tim's going to go into the details, and I'm going to talk a little bit about finance at the end. So. The urban goals strategy is, we were asked to look at seagulls because they're such a Marmite issue, and Tim has worked with an ornithologist to come up with our strategy, which we've now called the study, which is in your pack, and that's the huge 80-odd page document. And then we've condensed that down into a strategy, which Tim is going to talk about. And attached to the strategy, we've obviously got a communications plan and we've got an action plan. The action plan is not a workable action plan now. It's very much a theoretical document. But once we get going, we make that into a proper action plan that we can update and maybe bring back to this committee, our action plan, so you can see how we're getting on. That might be something that you might like us to do.
I think that's something we'd like to keep our eye on. Yes, please.
Yes. So I'll hand over to Tim to give you the background and the reasoning and how we've come up with the actions that we've come up with. Tim.
Got to turn that off now, Rick. That's right. Perfect. Right. Okay. So just to put a bit of context onto this, just to rewind a little bit, how did we get to this decision that we needed this urban goal strategy? So under the legacy Scarborough Council, going back to 2017 and before even, the council had, the Plymouth Scarborough Council had a policy, and it wasn't really a strategy, of intervention and disruption of gulls. And just to be clear about gulls, there are a number of different species. The two primary species in Scarborough are herring gulls, which are the very big ones that pinch your chips, and the cuddly little kittiwakes, which generally stay on the Spar Bridge and the Grand Hotel, but feed out at sea. So it's very important that we understand that. That's part of the education campaign. So with Scarborough, there was a national organisation called Natural England, who are the licensees or the licence operators, the authority who can issue licences for intervention, such as removing eggs, shooting, other sorts of quite draconian intervention. But there was an act that came out in 2021 called the Environment Act, and that basically laid down principles which said to sort of add power to the original act, which was the Wildlife and Country Act, which stated what birds are protected, which is largely most birds, with possibly the exception of wild pigeons. The act said that local authorities have a duty to protect and promote species. And for that purpose, Natural England changed their policy about when they would issue licenses to local authorities or anybody else that wanted to disrupt nesting birds. So because of that, the policy of the what I would call the grant system for proofing, so people get grants to proof from Scarborough Council up until quite recently, had to be set aside because it wasn't based on any sort of public health risk assessment. It wasn't based on any decision about health and safety risk. It was just, you've got some seagulls, some gulls, would you like a grant? So that had to be set aside along with the policy about removing eggs, etc. So I was tasked with developing a strategy, and the strategy had to take account of the Environment Act and had to take account the principles of protection and promotion of the birds, whilst putting my other hat on as the public health inspector for the coast, which is that I need to make sure that public health and safety was equally ensured at the same time. So that's quite a difficult balance, I think it's fair to say. And as Vicky alluded, it is quite a balance, and the word Marmite has been mentioned more than once during this process myself. So I think the first thing I did was look back at what actions had been taken by the former Scarborough Council to see how effective they had been. And what we did was a street survey, effectively, of the grants that had been given. And what we generally found was that the work that was done in terms of spiking and netting, etc., wasn't terribly successful. And even though it was successful, there were issues, particularly with netting, entrapment of birds, etc. So I think the aim of the strategy from the very outset was to try and create some sort of cohesion where we could have a sort of a coexistence and acceptance that the birds, it is their coast as much as it's humans' coast, and that we needed to get to a point of having a strategy that ensures that any actions that we did took account of the needs for the birds as much as it needs for the people. And so working alongside the consultant, I've developed a strategy that has 5 pillars, none of which are terribly surprising. Some of them are quite obvious that we should be doing. So one such as education of everybody about what sort of birds have we got the coast, actually explaining that Scarborough particularly, but equally the other areas, are really quite a good source and a good location for birds. Kittiwakes, for example, the population in Scarborough is actually quite stable, which is not what it's like nationally. The kittiwakes are in decline nationally, so we should really celebrate the fact that we have got quite a stable population. So education is the first real pillar, and that's both looking at where the waste, where people effectively are feeding gulls and why they shouldn't be feeding the herring gulls, trying to encourage people to not do that, but also in terms of the waste sources that people feed the gulls on, and also talking about the differences between the two species. The second pillar is about waste management, which I think most people would accept. If there is waste sources around, particularly the herring gulls are going to go for the waste. So if there's bags of rubbish on the floor, I see it myself when I'm going up Eastborough in the morning. You'll see the ripped bags, and the gulls are flying around, flapping around, eating the waste. So the obvious solution there is, can we try and control that as much as possible? Can we take some actions to reduce that by using gull-proof sacks and encouraging the likes of holiday lets to manage their waste when they're dealing with that? The third element, which is really a carry-on, which is that the councillors for a number of years now had a guano jetting programme, which is a way of ensuring that where there are hotspots, such as down by the Spa Bridge and near the Poundland and those sort of areas, that jetting is undertaken partly visually, but also for health and safety reasons, that we don't want people falling over. So we are certainly looking at continuing that service as part of the strategy. The fourth strategy, as I mentioned, coming on to intervention. Whilst we can't do proactive intervention with the birds themselves, we can still look at what we call targeting proofing. So if there are particular hotspots or buildings where there is a genuine public health issue, we can ask those building owners, the operations, to actually do some proofing, but that will be subject to a public health risk assessment, which isn't something we haven't done previously. So we'll only do it in situations where it's necessary, and clearly that's the aim of that part of the strategy. The there. And the fifth one, which is really important, which again we haven't really done to a great extent, is to monitor the gulls, to monitor both species that we've got in the coastal areas, to see how they're managing and to see what additional steps we may be able to take if they're not working correctly, or if they're very successful, we can move them onto areas such as planning. And although that's not one of the pillars, it is linked to the local nature recovery strategy, which the council has to implement under the Environment Act. So the urban gull strategy aligns with the local nature recovery strategy, which also covers seagulls and seabirds. So the plan is to look at things such as where are locations suitable for birds to nest. You know, if we've got new builds along the coast, are there areas where it isn't going to prove to be a public health risk, but it's areas where gulls could be tolerated or live? And are there areas in the town, such as the Brunswick Centre, where it's perhaps not appropriate for birds to be, and do we need to ask the project managers there to take action? So that's kind of is a very short overlay of the 5 pillars of the strategy.
Thank you. So all bar 2 of us were on Scarborough Council, so it feels like we live this pain at regular intervals.
Just a little bit about delivery, because obviously some of this is not business as usual. Is it working? Is it working?
It is working.
Yeah. Some of the things that we've suggested are not business as usual. So we asked the management board for some money basically, and we're going to fund it through environment in year budget. So we need 119 grand and a little bit, and that's going to cover things such as the pillar work that Tim's talked about. So you've got a table in the report. So it's cover the cost of gull-proof sacks, obviously the seasonal jetting, which is not properly funded at the minute, but will be. Whether we're going to have new litter bins on the coast or retrofit litter bins, it's quite expensive doing that. Then obviously money for education and comms campaigns, and obviously money for signage. So that money is being secured now in the environment budget, which is good. So because it's not business as usual, we need someone to coordinate it. So Tim's going to have someone in his team, someone that's already there that we're going to task with it to do the coordination, because obviously the main work, what needs to be done, will be done by my service, environmental protection around enforcement, also environmental enforcement around waste and stuff, and then obviously comms as well. So all that needs coordinated. So we're going to have somebody working in Tim's team, reporting to Tim to do the delivery element. So I think that's in a nutshell where we are, but it's a new approach, so we can all live together. I think that's the thing.
Oh, lots of experts on goals. Janet, Rich, and then Eric, and Neil. Sorry, Janet first.
Thank you, and thank you, Tim, and thank you for giving that excellent and thorough report here. As you look through it, the majority of them are in my division. And as Tim knows, because he caught me one morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was coming up East, but we particularly take care of a lot of our properties. Most of them now we're trying to get Hessian sacks. I restore them in my shop. We can't legislate for everybody, and because commercial operators have different people to collect. But I'd just like to say that we're moving forward. I mean, I witness your jet washing as you operate here, and it is a good way forward. But the signage, I think, and education is the biggest thing. I sit in horror when I see people feeding them publicly, and also just dumping the bags in the street, which I've got really good people in Castle Division. Some areas are more prominent than others where people will just dump it. But I'm glad you're taking on board the holiday accommodation, because they interchange on a daily basis, and I will try and work as I can with the owners. And some of them are very acceptable and will work on a bin system and will pay for it. So I think it's negotiation, as I know you're doing, and you're doing it really well, to try and accommodate this. But as we all know, I know when we started Eastborough Traders and Chamber of Trade, as a domestic user, we can use the bins outside, which are now all covered, which was a big improvement throughout Foreshore, Sandside and everywhere. But it's very annoying to see people where their business is food, putting the waste in the bin. I don't shop people, but they do get caught eventually. But I think we work a very good system, our cleansing, to help businesses and people who have issues. So I just want to welcome this going forward. I don't know how we can actually capture the ones who pinch somebody's sandwich, but I'm sure we'll work on it. And there's also the fact, I just asked him beforehand, what happens where there's a property where there is excretion on the floor? Is it up to that person to clean it if it's their property, if they haven't taken adequate steps to protect? You can also protect, and I listed 2 shops in the town. I think one's pavers and one used to be they've already done netting, but they still get to it. So it's how the kittiwakes are very clever, aren't they? They can finish up still going back. So that's one of my things. But just really to thank you and say we are being proactive, and the Hessian Sacks are marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rich.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you both for the report. I think it doesn't actually go quite far enough, I'm afraid. The only thing that I see that's of real significance is the gulf-proof waste sacks. Everything else seems to me to be pretty much on par with what we already have. The Scarborough Area Constituency Committee, this committee previously expressed support for alternative nesting provision and the potential resiting of birds from areas of conflict to purpose-built nesting locations. In fact, I think we've set aside £20,000 for it and spent maybe 13 or 14. So given that the Urban Gulf strategy appears to support artificial nesting structures for kittiwakes, why is it being excluded from the strategy?
It's not excluded. It will be in the action plans. Aligned property, it's in the papers. Aligned property are looking into it. It was on my list. Aligned properties are looking into it, and we can discuss at the end when's an appropriate time to come back. So it's not forgotten, and it will, I think, happen. But there needs to be some enabling work first. So this is the difference between these guys coming to talk to us about the strategy and then what the action plans are that fall out of it. But alternative nesting sites are still on the agenda.
Just to clarify, if you don't mind, because I need to come back, the £119,000 budget, that absolutely doesn't reference anything towards
No. This is about the 5 pillars that Tim's discussed.
Yeah.
The 0.5 full-time equivalent technical officer will need to monitor it, and then other initiatives will be brought forward, and the ANS is absolutely on the other initiative. That will be subject to a separate costing.
Okay.
And we spent 15 grand, I think, on the piece of work that we did. No, not a problem. Eric?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the report. It's very important. It does affect lots and lots of our residents. I used to be, I won't say bottom end, I used to live on Key Street, and I noticed one day a pair of breeding herring gulls had made a nest on my roof, and even more delight when I had 2 little chicks in them. But that delight soon disappeared as the chicks got bigger, and I needed my windows cleaning every day. And also the fact that they were pulling my roof tiles up. So they can be a problem to lots of people, well, especially in my division, even on Prospect Road, where there's, people are sort of really concerned about the noise they make and the damage that they do. So what my really sort of question is that, has North Yorkshire Council communicated with you? Because I believe in 3 to 4 years' time, we're having an extra bin for food. Now, are these bins more designable? You say you've got the bags for the gulls, but they're very clever creatures, and I'm sure they'll soon get in those bags. But are we going to design a bin where they can't get at the food because they're going to multiply if that's the case? Thank you, Chair.
That's what I was going to say about. So I mean, unless you're going to say any different. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is that we're working closely with the waste management team because we're aware that there is changes coming to the delivery slots and the delivery methods for waste. So we're working closely with Becky, who's the area manager, my equivalent for waste in the coastal areas. We're developing part of the communication with our PR colleagues to see how that can be done, because clearly some areas are only ever going to be on bags, they can't be on wheelie bins. So we're taking account of that, and that will be part of the strategy as well.
this is probably not my remit, so I'll tread carefully. But just for being at our Carl's management meetings, I know that our waste colleagues are not introducing the food waste bins that some councils have got for a few more years yet. So we need to rely on the sacks at the moment. Yeah. There's loads of technical reasons why they're not introducing them, which I'm not going to dare go there because it's not my.
The waste out.
Yeah.
I think that leads nicely into the question that I believe Councillor Swanwick is going to ask. Uh-oh, naughty word incoming.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I first of all say I do welcome the report. I think it's a very good report, and I was very pleased to see what the recommendations were about basically finding a way of living together with gulls rather than in some way thinking that we could remove gulls from the environment in our area. I was particularly pleased to see the outlawing of the more sort of barbarous practices that had been used in the past. Reading from your report, apparently they used narcotics to poison them in Whitby previously. I'm not sure whether the narcotics were for the gulls or for the population. Well, that's another matter. But it's good. It's good that there is a little history there. So it does, I think, move on into the 21st century. I'm pleased to see that. More recently, I believe in Whitby, they used hawks, releasing hawks into the environment, which I don't know whether that achieved anything at all, apart from terrifying the whole of the wildlife population. So it's good to see that a more a progressive approach is being taken. I do support that. I think the nub of it has already been touched on by Councillor Broadbent, and that is the issue about waste, and in particular food waste, because it seems to me the obvious conclusion from it is that if you could take the food waste out of the waste stream and stop it being collected at all, really, mixed up with other materials, then potentially, you could at least deal with a major part of the problem. And I think you're right. There is a discussion going on about a food waste collection in North Yorkshire, but it is quite controversial. And the decision has been taken in the past by council, certainly the position of the ruling group on the council, that we wait until 2043, which is because we got a dispensation from DEFRA to not introduce food waste until then, because we have a contract for the Allerton Park incinerator. So that's the time scale, which I don't think is really very good in the overall picture for North Yorkshire. But it would seem to me that there's a case to be argued, and this will apparently go to the executive on the 4th of August. So maybe we could append a view, and I would move it if that's the appropriate way to do, Chair. And that is to suggest that further examination is undertaken of the collection of food waste independently from the rest of the waste stream, thus avoiding the necessity for these special bags, which are the major part of the expenditure, and that they would bring this forward for the coastal area, which does have issues with seagulls, and as a pilot project. So that is my proposal, Chair.
Can I just tease out the two separate things in there? So I think we all agree 24, well, I won't be around, I don't think at 2043 or whenever, but we're talking about the urban goal strategy. So how would that help us deal with goals? So are we saying even now, even if we're going to send our food waste to Allerton Park, we should have commercial food waste picked up more frequently? Is that what you're saying?
I think there's a case for that, Chair. In other European countries, they have collections of food waste from both the residents and the restaurants on a daily basis. In some places in Italy, I know. I'm not suggesting we should have daily collections necessarily, though that might be something to look at. But if there was a culture of everybody putting food waste into a separate collection bin, then that removes the problem from the waste sacks. So that's the argument. I mean, do you want some wording for?
No, I just I couldn't work out if someone else wanted to speak. I'll just check round the room if anybody's got a view on that, Derek.
Yeah, I was going to raise the point of household food collections and accepting that there has been a delay, call it what you want, Councillor Swanwick, on it, and I agree with you. It's wrong that the delay is as far as that. If for some reason that delay was upturned, Chair, and it was to be brought in 12, 18 months, I do believe that it should form part of this strategy, because, you know, all hell will break loose if there isn't provision made. It's all right having Seagull-proof bags, but how proof are they going to be if there's actual food in there rather than fish and chip papers? So I would have liked to have seen something like that in that report. And if Councillor Swanwick's proposing that be appended to the exec committee, I'm more than happy to second it if it needs seconding, Chair.
Okay, it's really helpful. Vicky, do you need us to do a formal motion, or will you add something into your report?
We can add something in.
Oh,
I can make a little personal comment. I live in County Durham and we have our food waste bins and we've just started to use them this week. Marvellous.
Do you want to do a formal motion, or are you quite happy that Vicky and Tim will incorporate our views on it? Because this is the process. We get first dibs, then it's going to TEEE, I've never got how many E's they've got, and then it goes to 3 E's, and then it goes back to the executive, as you say, Neil, in August. Do you want to do a formal motion?
Could do that very quickly. I mean, I would say that something like this committee welcomes the goal strategy, and suggests that further work is done to explore the possibility of bringing forward a food waste collection before 2042, maybe as a pilot for the coastal area.
Okay, are you happy with that?
I'll second that.
That's wonderful. Should we just have a vote so we're doing the process correctly? All those in favour? That would be unanimous. Thank you very much. And will you please incorporate that into your report? That's a step forward for mankind. Derek, you had something else you wanted to say, or was it about food waste?
No, other than that, I'd move the report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So this is your strategy. Action plans are coming. You might have heard me say to Yorkshire Water, we meet again on the 30th of September. Is that too soon, or would you like to come back then? We're going to have a really full agenda in September again, but it would be good to see, especially over summer, what the impact has been, and especially on waste collections and the bags. Yeah. Okay, if everyone's happy with that, thank you both very much for attending. It was nice to see you both again. Thank you. Thank you. Right, we are on to item 12, North Yorkshire Police Community Safety Annual Report. Chief Inspector Lucy McNeil. I guess Inspector Craig Reagan's detained. And Community Safety and CCTV Annual Report, Paul Romans and Rhiannon, whose surname... Oh, you're sitting there, Rhi. Okay. Is it Buglas? Buglas. I thought it was, but I thought. Right. So we've all seen the presentations and the slides. So if you want to tease out anything, or not the slides, just the presentation, any slides in any issues in the report that you think we ought to know, and then we'll open for a general discussion. There was quite a lot of stats in the reports, wasn't there? So no doubt people want to drill in.
That's fine. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. Yeah, just to touch on a few key things really within the annual report, because they are updates from things we've touched on previously, when I've previously been sat here with yourselves. We have previously talked about the remodelling of the community safety hubs across the county to kind of align with one working model with North Yorkshire Police. That is very much underway now. In Scarborough, we have just one post to recruit to, so we'll have 3 dedicated community safety hub police officers. which we have one to recruit to still. So we have 3 vacancies in Scarborough. Two have been placed, so we've just got 1 vacancy that we're currently working on. So that model is very much underway now across the county to align us with everybody else. That's something that we are looking at, and that should hopefully support us in kind of really tracking through any pieces of work where it requires police working really tightly alongside our community safety officers. We work exceptionally well together now with the neighbourhood policing team, but obviously the neighbourhood policing team work shifts. They have different days off to our community safety officers, which don't quite align. So it just enables a little bit more cohesive joint working, hopefully, as we move forward. We also have across the county as well. So we've got a community safety hub joint development group, which is chaired by myself and Chief Inspector Simon Williamson, who is County Chief Inspector for North Yorkshire Police. And that is in regard to looking at how we align the working practice amongst the community safety hubs across the county, making sure that we're always working to the same remit, like looking at best practice, looking at how we can keep moving forward and developing the hubs, keep building our connections with wider partners and wider services as well, because we still do have a little bit of inconsistency with some partner agency buying across the county, where it's a little bit dependent on person rather than post, and that is something that we are working towards, making sure is consistent as we can get it across the county, while still ensuring that we are responding to local need and local demand and the differences that there are across the whole of North Yorkshire. So that is something that's very much in place now. We've had 2 meetings of the Community Safety Hub Development Group, that is ongoing, and we are meeting quarterly at this moment in time. We have also got an antisocial behaviour framework and policy and procedure for the community safety and CCTV service. Just very keen to highlight that is not a North Yorkshire Council policy. It is a community safety and CCTV service policy that will be heard at exec. And we also have a framework that underpins that as well, how we are all working within the community safety hubs that aligns with that too. So the kind of very clear model that we are, response times and various things we will pick up and work with partner agencies on. Additionally, there is, just to touch on CCTV, we also have a wider strategic review of the CCTV service that is ongoing at this moment in time. An end date for that is provisionally August, I believe, but I don't want to kind of absolutely tie that down, but that is what we are provisionally looking at for the end date of that review. That is looking at our whole kind of CCTV delivery, what we're doing across the county, because there are some inconsistencies. Scarborough, Whitby, this area retains a really kind of at the far end of kind of where we are in terms of digital technology with CCTV. We have an excellent control room. We have an excellent system that we have in place, and we that remains. We remain the most kind of widely covered area across the county as well in terms of public open space CCTV. So, but there is a wider review ongoing in regards to the whole service that should be concluding around August. You probably note from the stats as well, just to take you to the back of the report from the CCTV stats, it's high. It just shows how vital that service is to community safety and supporting North Yorkshire Police. With incidents there, just in Scarborough alone, over 8,000 that we've supported with just in the last 12 months, and 832 for Whitby, 66 for Eastfield. That number for Eastfield is probably a little on the lower side because there was a period of time with no coverage over at Eastfield, which has been supported by Eastfield Town Council. That's just due to how we can bring the cameras back to the control room, and we have no means to do so without the use of kind of mobile data, unfortunately, which is not within budget anymore. I don't know if you want to touch on anything, Rhiannon, in terms of ongoing work. That's the wider kind of strategic stuff for community safety and CCTV. I'll let Rhiannon touch on anything else that's going on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I think we did list in the report the ongoing priorities for the next 12 months. So that does include focusing on antisocial behaviour hotspot areas. So those that come to note with reports, such as in the town centre, where we're getting antisocial behaviour. So it's providing more of a presence there, a focus on those cases and looking at what powers and actions we can utilise, such as enforcement powers, community protection warnings and notices. And just touching on that, all of our community safety officers in this area and county-wide have had training on those powers. So they're now fully trained in using their community protection warnings and notices, criminal behaviour orders, closure orders and injunctions. So that gives them more tools to be able to use those civil powers that they've got available to them, and be able to do that as part of a team. So we work closely with the police on that, and we both have the power to be able to look at closure orders and criminal behaviour orders and injunctions as well. So it's just finding out how we can use them. We have issued quite a few over the last sort of 4 or 5 months in terms of community protection warnings and notices on individuals that are coming to note for causing antisocial behaviour at local residents in Castle Ward, for example, and in the town centre as well. And some of them is linked to street drinking and antisocial behaviour from that. So we'll continue to do work there, and any reports we get, we'll put a focus on looking at what powers we can utilise. And we've got the way we look at young person antisocial behaviour as well. It's more of a looking at early intervention, prevention and diversion, and there's been a few new diversionary routes that we've been able to access there as well. So there's something called Active Futures, and that's trying to utilise gym memberships for young people and divert them from antisocial behaviour. We've had quite a few referrals since we started that at the end of February, and it's actually proving that these people that are on the cusp of antisocial behaviour, that are on the periphery of causing ASB, they are actually taking this offer, they're utilising this membership, and then they're not coming to note again. So we'll continue to monitor that and look at good working stories from that, and see if we can provide more access to these diversions for these young people. So yeah, they're kind of the main things. We've got nighttime economy as well that we're working on. Obviously, we've got the World Cup this year for football, so we'll be looking at nighttime economy, positive engagement visits in the area this month and next month, just to engage with the premises so they know we're still there and so they've got support. That's probably the main things. Like I say, it's all listed in the report.
Thank you. I'll just briefly touch on as well, actually, because I didn't previously. We're now in I previously mentioned, I believe, I hope I have, our Clayhole Build initiative in Barracliff, which is obviously a police-led initiative. Initially, we are now very much in the build phase, which is North Yorkshire Council-led, and we are still trying to pull partners together and look at a number of projects that we've got going on. We've had some really excellent results from the clear phase and the hold phase with North Yorkshire Police. We've seen a real increase in intelligence and the community being willing to engage with us, and some really positive community engagement with us from that, which has been really excellent. And then we've had a fantastic project called A Different Path, which Gallows Close Community Centre have been absolutely fantastic on, which is working with a number of young people, with one of our PCSOs as well, who is a major part of that. And that's looking at diverting young people who are maybe not engaging in education full time, and we are providing them with practical skills to go into work. And that's proven really successful. Some young people who have been out of education for a considerable amount of time, or not attending at all in terms of their current provision, and we've seen some young people turn that around to engaging with their education placements 5 days a week, as well as A Different Path. It's been a really fantastic initiative, and we're hoping there are plans to kind of suggest how we can grow that in the Barracliff area. So there may be further updates on that in the future. I might ask for some support on that, but that is something that we are looking at currently as well.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, and I know Eric and Janet have, and this question might also bleed into the police as well. So World Cup, lots of drinking. Are we expecting a peak in domestic abuse? Is that the pattern? And how do we resource accordingly for that?
Afternoon, everybody. So I think it's a bit of an odd World Cup this year. I'm not a football fan, but as I understand it, the matches are happening at really strange different times. So if I'm perfectly honest with you, it's kind of a bit of an unknown as to what impact that's going to have on spikes in domestic abuse, the level of drinking, and the demand on sort of police and other agencies as well. So, for example, some matches are sort of 2 a.m. that sort of kick off. So in terms of the licensed premises, I'm sure you'll know, so they are able to, for those that want to, they can sort of stay open to allow for that people to kind of watch the matches. We do have some additional staff on for some of the key matches that we think will be very, very popular. But really a lot of it is kind of a watch, a sort of wait and see. But in terms of our domestic abuse teams, they're kind of ready and waiting to kind of see what kind of happens really with it. But it's honestly, it's a real unknown, just because we've never had one like this, with matches at just such different times over the course of a night.
I'd understood that European nations were being given favourable kick-off times, which might mean 8 or 9 o'clock. But I agree, it's a nightmare.
I think the thing is, I think the impression I get is that if you're a football fan, you might be wanting to watch all the matches, and if you're just an
England supporter,
or England supporter, or a European supporter, you might just be wanting to watch those matches. So those are the ones that we sort of got sort of extra staff on and we're kind of aware of. But it's the ones that are kind of like the middle of the night. I'm not sure how popular they'll be or not, but obviously there is an ability for people to be in licensed premises late on, drinking if they so wish to watch those matches. So
thank you. My other one is around hate crime. So I've been aware in my division of 2 issues of racial issues. Have we seen an increase in hate crime, or is it pretty much as it's always there and it's no better or worse than it has been?
So for our command over here, so the Coast Command, we haven't seen an increase in hate crime across the whole of North Yorkshire. I think there's certainly been some concerns with things that have been happening elsewhere in the world and elsewhere in the country. And in terms of that, we've sort of put on additional patrols and support for those people affected. But for us here on the coast, we've not seen an increase in it.
But I'll hang on to that good news.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a change, if I'm honest, that the coast sort of are not impacted by these things that happen. So it's been quite pleasant for us.
Thank you. Eric.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's really I suppose it's a comment and a question on antisocial behaviour. I think I've mentioned it before. It's mainly around the North Bay, Marlborough Street, Benham Terrace. I rang the 101 up and got through to the control room a couple of days ago. It's the residents complaining. They don't wish to be named. They're like, anonymity. So, and I was told there was I was in a queue of 17. So, and I ring back and say that, help's on the way type thing. And they're pulling the hair out, basically. Comments such as, the police claiming to be busy is a recurring problem. We can't take much more of this. So please emphasise that they don't want these people drinking, taking drugs on our doorstep anymore. They're in touch with the BBC about antisocial problems. And they say this wouldn't be tolerated on the Esplanade or in Scarborough. They thank me for my efforts, but the following day, I had a phone call, I think it was 11:15 last night in bed, I was just dozing off, and by the way of an update, they're talking about the HMOs in that area. This was 11:15 last night. There's people falling over the benches. There's been an ambulance there. I think a young lass took an overdose. They think she died. They want to know who runs all these HMOs. They just say it's a dumping ground now for convicts. It's been going on now for well over a year. No one wants this people. The people of Benham Terrace feel unsafe because of this. Language gets a little bit heavy, so I'll be careful what I say. How on earth do ex-convicts behave, buying alcohol and create this havoc in this beauty spot? They're really saying that they want a solution, not a sticking plaster. And they're going to bombard the police with counsel and FOI requests. As I say, they thank me for what I'm doing. But when I have phoned the council up, obviously, and I've asked for a PSPO, Public Safety Protection Order, to stop drinking in that area. I think if I'm looking to get one, it perhaps take well over a year. And these people don't want to wait a year outside the Delmont Hotel. They're losing guests, they're losing people complaining all the time. And also what they're saying is that if this goes on, it's going to be intolerable up there. What else can they do? I also got a phone call from North Yorkshire Council. It was a lady from Environment. I wasn't certain which department she was from. She says, more or less told me to stop ringing up. She said, the police are now in control of this. We're well aware. So if I ring the police, which I do, maybe 3 or 4 times a month, where it's even more now, they say to me, look, we have an ongoing case, forget it, just let us deal with it. But what's the answer? I don't know. I mean, I drove up once there, was it like week last, and there's a police van there, but just these louts there threatening police officers. Disgusting it was. Yeah, so it's bad that, you know, just mentioning hotspots, and that's my division as well. That's why I'm labouring it. So just any comments really.
Paul looks like he's volunteering to say something.
Yeah, I will let Rhiannon come in shortly as well, and I don't. Inspector Regan might want to come and join too. And just to touch on, so in terms of the comments around being ex-convicts and various things like that, what in relation to is what North Yorkshire Council use for temporary accommodation. They are not hostels or properties exclusively used for people who've spent time in prison or being convicted of crime. However, due to the nature of some people, these are kind of some of our most vulnerable individuals who are often in temporary accommodation. As I'm not sure you don't need me to educate on, social demographics and kind of those vulnerabilities and associated risks of being victims or perpetrators of crime. So that does happen, but they're not exclusively properties that are used for that purpose. It can happen. Yeah, and we are aware of issues that have been ongoing up there. I will let Rhiannon touch on what we've got going on, because it's very well known to community safety, and we do link in with the owners of those establishments in those areas and have some really positive partnership working. It is challenging because we, as a local authority, have a duty, and I'm not here to represent housing, obviously, but we do have a duty to house people within the authority, when we have to meet that statutory duty to ensure people are appropriately housed. Temporary accommodation often acts as when people are in appeal, or we don't have a property to available at that time, but we may have a duty to house them at some point. So it is a real challenge for community safety, North Yorkshire Police, and our partners in housing to ensure that we're balancing that whilst taking into account the needs of the wider community as well. So I'll just retouch on some work that's ongoing at the minute.
Yep, so it is an ongoing case with Community Safety Hub, and it's one that we're working very closely and jointly with Neighbourhood Policing Team, specifically Sergeant Tom Wilkinson, who is Sergeant for that area, and Community Safety Officer Karen Brecken. They've been working tirelessly for probably the best part of a year now on this case. We have started enforcement on the individuals we have been able to identify. I can say the individual that we've got a community protection notice on isn't part of a temporary accommodation, or they're from the area but they're not from that establishment. But we did identify them as causing antisocial behaviour in that area. We've served them with a warning, which they didn't heed, so we've escalated that to a notice, and that along with the reports from the residents of the area will give us enough to look at further enforcement. So whether that's a criminal behaviour order or an injunction with a condition to stop them attending that area, that will be our next steps, and that's what the ongoing work is that we're carrying out. It is part of our hotspot, and it is a priority for us. So just to kind of hopefully offer you some reassurance there that we are looking at it, and we will continue to look at it and work on it.
Sorry, Chair, if I should jump in as well. Sorry, Councillor Broadbent, you did mention a PSPO too. There is a PSPO in place that does cover that area. It's not. No, it should cover. I'm trying to think of the map off the top of my head here, but it will fall out, I would expect, out of the total prohibition zone. However, I believe it should still fall under the wider PSPO, where if there is street drinking linked to antisocial behaviour, it does apply. I would have to double check the map though, but I feel like it is, because that the wider area of the PSPO is quite wide ranging. We did obviously, I can present to yourselves in regard to the total prohibition zone, which was more town centre focused, but the wider area of the PSPO, which basically prohibits street drinking of alcohol if there is associated antisocial behaviour or likely to cause. I suppose where the difficulty may come, it has to be on the street. So if there's people in their properties on Marlborough Street who are drinking, the PSPO doesn't apply in those situations. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your responses. Janet.
Thank you. I'll carry on from Eric there. Eric's got him first, but I also get calls from Eric's area because it's borders on mine. But it's getting ridiculous now with some of these properties. You can't be responsible for all of it, and I do thank you, because you must get sick of all my emails, especially Inspector Regan. I mean, the other morning, 2 people were laid out on Spray Lane steps. That is a route that goes to Anne Bonte's grave. These are Reach properties. There's 10 agencies supposed to be looking after them, but they don't. They all get cuckooed, and we have all this trouble, and the residents are coming to the end of their tether. Valley Road is another one. You must be sick of going there. That's got an application in to be a HIMO. Now, it's how these properties are run. I've had HMOs in my area since I came on the council 20 odd years ago. I think I had 600 when I came on. Now we're getting it down. But the people, I mean, the person on Valley Road wants to meet me, right? I'm in two minds why I want to meet him, because I've called the planning application to planning. There are people there sitting on walls, drinking, abuse. As you know, you get called there. Now, somebody has moved into there that's just a normal person. He came to my shop the other day and I said, what's it like inside? Do you have a lounge? He said, oh, no, we have to sit on the picnic tables outside. Well, is that a good way to house somebody who's got extreme issues? Because that affects the whole of the neighbourhood. And I get calls up to midnight. I got a call last night. I was asleep. I maybe should take my phone to bed, but I do. These people are desperate. Absolutely desperate, why they should have to live in an area and put up with this. So I question the same as Councillor Broadbent. I'm not criticising you. I think you do a fantastic job. You can't be everywhere. If you look at the figures for crime, my Castle Division has the highest. It always did have. When I was in the police authority, it did. I chair the CAP group, I chair Scarborough Anti-Theft group. But it's something we've got to get into. I mean, the other one, which is serious within my area that you're aware about, is your coincidence with Operation Beat, young persons. You know, I've had a property near me completely wrecked. I went into that property because the door was open. I didn't go with myself on my own. A man came with me. We've never seen antisocial behaviour like that. Glass doors all smashed. You know, actually got into it. Finally, the other Sunday, you came because they went round through a coal chute. They were arrested. I finally got all the entrances boarded up now. We shouldn't have to put up with that. That's a property totally wrecked, you know. As a result of all this, and you probably all know, I got my shop window put through. It was malicious. I've got it on camera. And you shouldn't have to put up with that. That's costed me alone £500 in the glass. Plus I've updated me CCTV. But you shouldn't have to put up with this. You know, it's not good. And there's a councillor, but I've had it happen to me before, and I won't go into that. That was because the man didn't get his own way with the planning application. And so he smashed all my windows, which was a £5,000 job. So, you know, these people are vicious. I mean, the other thing which I'm pleased about, wild camping, now the PSPO is coming in. I understand it's coming in this month, isn't it, to help with it? I've had 4 representations today, which I've passed on, about the shelter below the ground. People are permanently sleeping in there. Not good for everybody passing. We took all the seats out so they didn't go in anymore. But that's a worry to me, that people are seeing this all the time. And do they come under wild camping? The other thing, and I can't answer, I appreciate what our Chief Inspector has said here about the World Cup. But, you know, my street is full of pubs. My phone, I dread sometimes my phone's going to be ringing all night, but people cope. They have to cope. But to think that there might be people going to watch a football match at 2 o'clock in the morning and serving alcohol and then coming out, well, they'll all be having to sleep during the day, our residents, and stay at home during the night. But I know it's the World Cup and everybody loves it, but I don't envy your job. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. But I think you have got to work with some of these other agencies that are supposed to be 10 agencies working, looking after these people, and rectify the position, because obviously the people running these HMOs, or whatever they want to call themselves, or halfway houses, are not taking charge. And there should be there somebody 24/7 to cope with these people, so that residents don't have to cope with the abuse and everything else. I mean, we had a tent in West Square the other morning. I know it's gone,
But it's not very nice if you're having a breakfast where a woman comes out, drops her knickers and does a business, is it? I'm being blunt. But I get these calls all the time, as does Eric. And we're trying to help our people. We just feel useless, really, because you're going along doing what you can do, but it's the follow-up that needs to be done. And we need to be taking care when we do planning where we put these places. That's all I'm saying. We need the places for people, I'm not disputing it, but they need 24/7 care and they need provision within these properties to cater for the needs.
Thanks, Anna. I think Inspector Reagan's volunteering to speak, but just to come forward. I think you might need a mic.
Thank you.
Do you want to come through?
Oh, is that, you want that?
Sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to clearly differentiate between this, because there's obviously there's a lot of issues within there, and there's different types of properties that have obviously kind of been brought up. So the so the Reach properties. So the Reach is that's the kind of North Yorkshire Council led housing first model with partners from Tees Square Valley Trust, from Beyond Housing, IDAS, and which they work with our probably most vulnerable individuals. Well, I'm saying probably our most vulnerable individuals in the county in terms of homelessness. So that to be eligible for being part of the Reach programme, there has to be multiple areas of disadvantage for individuals to be considered for Reach. We have generally kind of 18 on caseload at Reach at any one time. Now, what happens unfortunately is we are dealing with very challenged individuals with a lot of issues, and 3 or 4 can cause a significant impact on wider areas. But overall, we've had a lot of success stories that have come from Reach from individuals that would otherwise be homeless and potentially causing issues on the street, but have been housed and have been supported. The model for Reach is not 24/7 supervision. It's actually very difficult to find placements for individuals who need to be in 24/7 supervised care. And that, I mean, a lot of this comes down to it'd be questions for our housing partners and adult social care for what is required and when people are eligible for that. But the Reach properties, that is what it's for. The temporary accommodation, and that's been mentioned. That's obviously, that's, as I've mentioned before, that's North Yorkshire Council meeting our duties in terms of housing, where we have to house people, and they often do cross over with people who have vulnerabilities as well, which is why they're often in temporary accommodation. So again, there's no expectation placed in terms of what that needs to. I think sometimes what gets confused is we've had accusations before that these are kind of hostels or places like rehabilitation centres for people. That's not what they are. They are temporary accommodation places. So in terms of living space and things like that, I think I don't want to speak too out of turn. I don't know, and Rhiannon might know this better than me, as somebody who's previously worked in housing. For what we have to provide for temporary accommodation, I would expect would be a room with access to kitchen facilities and toilet facilities. I don't know, but that's what I'd imagine. But Rhi might know better than me. And then there was wider issues there in terms of children, young people. Yeah, we recognise absolutely that is something that is an issue as well. We're trying to really build relationships with our partners in early help, particularly youth justice. Education partners work really well with us on children and young people's maps. That's trying to make sure that the offer is there for young people, but this is also a national issue rather than just a localised Scarborough issue as well, in terms of young people and how we're engaging young people across the country. Coastal towns obviously do get it gets a little bit more challenging in some areas with what we've got going on, but that's where we are. Sorry, there's a number of issues in there, Councillor Jefferson. I think I had more to say, but I'll let Inspector Regan come in.
Thank you. I just really want to offer you some reassurance about the issues you raised, Councillor Jefferson. So, Sprit Lane steps here that you raised, and you've mentioned it's a Reach property. You may have seen recently that we've actually taken a closure order out on one of the Reach properties. Now, that's something that's last resort for us in terms of because of the level of support that those individuals require. However, the tact that we're using as a neighbourhood policing team is you might have heard that there's full closure orders and partial closure orders. Now, partial closure orders allows the tenant to remain there, but gives us some control over people that can access that premises. So effectively, the situation faced without a closure order is that anyone can access that property and can bring antisocial behaviour and crime to that address. The partial closure order then allows us to prevent people entering that location or that address with a power of arrest if they are in breach of a partial closure, which was the example that we've recently used. It went from partial closure, the tenant was unable to manage that partial, there was a significant incident after, and within 3 days of that incident we'd obtained a full closure. But that is through a process where we meet with the REACH team every Monday. There is a discussion around which of the clients are most problematic and most challenging and which are needing additional support. They have got some success stories which we've worked with, and with demand decreased massively with some individuals, but other individuals, some of their clients, we've obtained criminal behaviour orders against. We've obtained a full closure. So we do a lot of work with them, but a lot of our reliance on that is actual direct reporting to us. So some of the examples you mentioned there, Sprate Lane steps, that recent incident of the person laid out on the steps, that was reported via yourselves. We actually didn't have a call into our control room. So in terms of a dot on a map where the problem is, it comes via third party reporting. So yourselves, or we find it on Facebook via groups. And that's the thing. So part of my role is to look at our hotspot policing, and traditionally we have done hotspot policing where we've gone, where are the most dots on the map, and then we put our patrols around there. The government basically up till April this year made us patrol areas that they identified over a 12-month period where the most dots were on the map. Since April this year, they've allowed us to pick our own hotspot areas, and there isn't that requirement of just that data set of, say if there's 10 hotspots, there's 10 dots there. If you've got a repeat caller that's a regular caller that rings up, you'll have 10 spots. The problem might be 200 yards down the road where no one rings, or it comes in third party. That didn't generate a dot on the map. The new process now allows me as the area inspector to take into account all the invaluable information that you pass to me, all the Crime Stoppers information that we get via intelligence, all the Facebook posts that I see, now allows me to create my own hotspots. I'm not directed by the Home Office. So as of April this year, I've created our own hotspot areas. Long Westgate has its own hotspot area. It has daily patrols in the peak hours that's now identified. Up until April, because the calls weren't coming in, that wasn't a hotspot area for us. And we had situations where hotspots were created for us and we patrolled them because that's where we were told to patrol them, but it wasn't the most impactful and most effective use of our time. So I would hope that we will start to see an improvement in the areas that we're patrolling. We're at the right areas at the right times. But the good thing is we've now got the autonomy to amend that. If we think, right, Long Westgate, we've solved that problem now, and historically that would have been on for 12 months. If we solve that in 3 months' time, we can say, right, where's the next spot? We can move that and then pick another area. We don't have to stick it out for 12 months. So I'm hoping that that will give us some autonomy. In terms of the young people work we're doing, so we've mentioned Upbeat, so that's bespoke early action together. So we have a 3-tiered process. This is, again, it's only been implemented really over the last sort of 6 to 12 months. So stage 1, the young people, early intervention, they're spotted by CCTV in the sound centre on the cusp, on the outcome, on the outskirts of groups causing ASB. We identify that in person. They're referred into the community safety process at stage 1, and that then this is a three-stage process of that. Initially, it's a letter. Sometimes, if we identify the young person, a letter sent home to the parents just to say, your young person's been involved in an incident, other than it's nothing major, but just be mindful. Second stage is they're visited by a community safety officer or a PCSO for that area. Do you need any support? Are you finding any difficulties? Can we engage you with the young person? And then the final stage, if that hasn't worked or they're not engaging in that, they're invited into the office and we'll look at acceptable behaviour contracts. So those acceptable behaviour contracts are where we sit down, we plan out any issues. It might be family issues. It might not even be around the young person. It might be family issues, and we put appropriate referrals in, and that's documented on a contract. At that point, they exit the early intervention prevention stage and they go into what we call tier 2, which is the diversion stage. At that point, we engage our youth services. So we work with Sidewalk Youth Group. We brief them on an evening. They detach out. Their detached workers go out into the community. They patrol the areas. They try to divert the young people that will engage with them to proactive projects like Reeves I mentioned there, one of the sports programs we have a different path, which is a life skills program. There's lots going on there. And then the third stage, if we're unable to succeed with that and they're not able to divert them, but they continue down the criminal behaviour route through youth justice, we work with youth justice and they go into tier 3 and we look at the criminal behaviour element, which we've currently got a couple of young people going through that where they've progressed through the stage. That model has been quite effective in that Paul mentioned earlier on. We've got young people who have not been in education for 2 years, have not engaged in education. They're now actually back in full-time role, sitting GCSEs, and we've had young people that are effectively got life skills training and education certificates, and they've not been in education for 2 years. So there's some early outcomes from that are really positive. I am not naive that there isn't an issue in the town centre with young people. I am not. But I am just in the process at the moment of putting an application and a bidding process through to try obtain detached youth workers to work alongside us that will go on a permanent basis and identify the young people and work with their families. And then if they don't engage with that, then as an enforcement agency, we're fair game. Unfortunately, what we've been doing traditionally is we've been wearing too many hats. We've been trying to early intervention, prevention, diversion and enforcement. Now, if we're working with a family one day and then we're having to enforce them the next day, all that work we've done is just gone. So we're now trying to put the appropriate agencies in at the right level. So as an enforcement agency, we can just do the enforcement and do what we need to do and put the right agencies in. So we've got Operation Sun. I think it's in your report. You might have seen that in there. So Operation Sun is an expansion of the Winter of Action, which again the Home Office set up for us. In there is designated deployments and operations specifically around antisocial behaviour and youth problems in the town centre and wider. We will have designated patrols in there, and that will be not just police led, but it'll be in with community safety. Our licensing team are coming in because we've got an issue with young people drinking as well, so they're coming in on there. Sidewalk are coming in the North Yorkshire Youth. So I'm hoping over the next 3 months period you will start to see a development in our engagement with those young people and hopefully a decline in that, because as I say, we've now got a bit of an autonomy where we can put our people where we need to put them, not where we're told to put them. In terms of the premises, I'm glad that's been boarded up now. And I know you've emailed me a number of times regarding it. What I will say is, if you do raise something with the police, we might not be the appropriate agency to deal with it. But what I can assure you is I will forward it on to the relevant departments and try apply a little bit of pressure where I can. But so unfortunately, some things are just out of my hands. I can't instruct the council departments to go board it up because it's, yeah. But whenever you do send it in, even if it's not in our area or in our area of business, I will try to get it to the right people. And if I can't, I will let you know. Yep.
Janet, I think Paul wanted to come in as well. Can we just let the question finish? You're not on the mic.
It was the difference between partial closure and closure. Does that mean that you're not letting visitors go, or are you going to close them or remove them from the property?
So partial closure is the tenant is allowed to remain there. And we're able to stipulate who attends that.
I understand it, because
full closure is completely shut initially for 3 months. So there's no one allowed in there. There's no new tenants can be put in there. It's a break for the community for 3 months.
Right.
If at that point we feel that it's still an issue, we can extend it to 6 months.
Right.
But the courts take a real dim view on if we've not been able to resolve it in 3 months without a tenant there, then we aren't
I understand all the cooking. Sorry, Chairman.
That's all right. Paul, did you want to add to something Inspector Reagan said?
Yeah, sorry, I just want one previous point to what Councillor Jefferson raised as well. Just to reiterate what Inspector Reagan said there, we rely hugely on our voluntary sector for the youth work, and they do some fantastic work. Sidewalk was mentioned by Inspector Reagan there. We don't have any paid detached youth work positions within North Yorkshire Council. We rely heavily on our VCSE partners, and Sidewalk at One, St Giles Trust have been commissioned by the combined authority to do some work with young girls at risk of CSA, CCE, child criminal exploitation. So that's been a piece of work that's been ongoing for a little while as well, with individuals with lived experience. What we do have within North Yorkshire Council is our trusted relationships workers with any young people who are at risk of child criminal exploitation. We have access to those workers now as well. That's something that's relatively new within North Yorkshire Council, those posts. So there is work ongoing with individuals who are at risk of exploitation. That is something that is happening, but we do, for the detached youth work side, people being out on the streets, we do rely heavily from that engagement point of view on our VCSE partners. And sorry, Councillor Jefferson, it came to me as I passed on to Inspector Regan to speak. So in terms of the PSPO for wild camping, so that the aim of that PSPO, it's not a community safety led one. It is led by our enforcement team, but the aim is that is not to be punitive against individuals who are homeless. It is strictly linked. It's to use of tents and wild camping. That is due to, and some of those individuals may be homeless if they're overtaking a space and utilising tents as we have seen previously. But it's also to tackle issues on the north side of Scarborough that we've seen over the last couple of summers, with an excessive amount of tents on the green spaces there, and overtaking that. So that's led to kind of barbecues, and we've had a couple of injuries and things like that. So the wild camping PSPO is not around targeting and punishing people for being homeless. It is around tackling issues of people camping wildly. And so it's very strictly limited to tents. So if we have, what we do get in Scarborough is probably, I don't think I'm guessing here and saying we do get a higher number of homeless individuals who gravitate toward the coast than in other areas of the county. That does happen. That can be linked to a number of things, but our rough sleeping team work endlessly to try and engage with these people. I think if housing was sat here, they would probably say we don't have enough properties for the amount of people that we have. And that is a challenge that we're always looking at. And I know there's always initiatives that housing are looking at to try and make sure that there is spaces for people. But the homelessness issue is not really something that's solved by the PSPO.
Okay, thank you. Can I move on? Because we're against the clock as always. Tom. Sorry, Councillor Seston, Tom.
No, we can be on first name terms, I don't mind. So I'm Tom Seston, a councillor for Eastfield. And obviously Eastfield has a lot of antisocial behaviour. We've seen over the past sort of year or so particularly, but it's been building for a while, a big proliferation of young kids who are just completely out of control. And it's gone from kids perhaps being noisy at the shops, misbehaving 2 or 3 years ago, to kids putting people's windows through at 2:30 in the morning. And these are younger kids, these are early teens. Speaking with some of the PCSOs and police officers in Eastfield, they're saying it is much earlier that kids are going off the rails, shall we say. And I'm just wondering what action can be taken because it's the same kids that are doing this. It's the same group. The police are well aware of them. The parents are all aware of what's going on. Nothing's happening. I'm just wondering, is there any possibility of perhaps going towards enforcement with the parents and holding the parents responsible for the children's actions?
I don't know if Inspector Regan wants to. He looked like he wanted to speak.
Sorry,
looked like he wanted to.
Councillor Sefton, it's not my area, but the process that you're on about there in terms of enforcement of young people. So for us to enforce on a young person, we have to have shown that we've attempted and tried early intervention, prevention, diversion before we get to that tier 3 stage. That is the process that's written into legislation. We can't just jump straight to enforcement. Unfortunately, part of that process is as well, we have to have the support services and agencies in place in order for us to, say, for example, the old traditional parenting order. I don't know if you're aware of them, but we used to have parenting orders. So they're still available to us, but we have to have the ability in order that if we go for a parenting order on a family, we have to have the provision for that. North Yorkshire doesn't have that provision at the moment. In order to, if we run it, so if the courts issued a parenting order, the Youth Justice Service would need to find a service provider that could provide that provision. So in terms of dealing with the parents, that would be, again, upon conviction, but we have to follow that entire process. So we have to show, and I can give you an example. We've tried it with a young person. We've jumped straight from early intervention prevention to enforcement. It got in front of the stipendiary judge at the time, not a magistrate, stipendiary judge, who said, no, I'm not happy that you haven't exhausted all your avenues yet. So then we had to start the whole process again. So we are restricted about what we can do, but we work heavily with youth justice when we get to that stage. But the tiers system that I mentioned earlier, we've just recently rolled that out into Eastfield and Filey as well. So again, there'll be a little bit of a delay in the rollout, but I know my counterparts in that area are doing the youth maps process. But we're heavily involved with the third sector and voluntary sector with this in terms of our diversion work. And if we can evidence we've done that, then we can look at the enforcement. And that's where the delay often is before we can pick our agency up. So as support from yourself in relation to that is, if you can encourage our third sector and voluntary sectors, if they've got an opportunity to offer additional like youth club nights, that type of thing, detached work, please help them do that, because that really helps us in the long run.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of what provisions you're talking about for parenting orders, what does that look like broadly?
So parenting orders are effectively where they can have classes around parenting skills and things like that. Again, if the courts are, again, it would have to be a case that's in court where a court order is issued, but it's unique to each individual. So it might be that one person has a substance misuse issue that might form part of that order, but that would be part of an assessment process. So that's where we would need that, but you would need a commissioned service, and I don't believe there is one at the moment.
So I think there's a couple of interesting things out of that, isn't there? So, Inspector, you said that you were putting a bid in for detached youth work, but the Eastfield isn't your area. So presumably if you were successful in that bid, that wouldn't help Tom.
So it would actually help him, because it's the bid is through the bid I'm putting in. If we are successful, with detached youth work for town, but the majority of the young people that are causing issues in town are from the Eastfield area.
Okay.
So we migrate some of the issues in. But the issue is, my team go out and enforce the dispersals I put in place, and then unfortunately we just displace it back out to Eastfield. So the idea is, if we get that right level of engagement, we won't just be playing ping pong between the two areas. We won't be, they come out into town, I disperse them, they go back out to Eastfield, Eastfield disperse them back to us. It's a bit more of a joined up approach. And the project we are going for, we're going to call it Community Connectors. And the detached youth workers will connect the different communities together. So if they are causing issues in Scarborough and they live in Eastfield, we will find the appropriate service and scheme that will meet that young person and family's needs. So it's not a Scarborough issue, it's not an Eastfield issue, it's a whole, because that's the
So parenting orders are completely new to me. So I suggest that we put on our work programme getting youth justice in to talk to us about why they don't do parenting orders, because everybody, well, we'll discuss the work programme, but I think that was a really helpful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have got Rich and David, and I'm against the clock again. We'd made up time, now we're losing it.
Thanks, your chair. Hotspot policing, I think I've seen that in action in 2024 around Prince of Wales Gardens and the surrounding Ramshill area, and complaints went down vastly that year. The impact of having emergency temporary accommodation and associated ASB, there is a link. Wherever emergency temporary accommodation is cited in a residential area, there will inevitably and unfortunately be a rise of ASB. Janet has seen it, I've seen it, Eric's seen it, and others are alluding to it also. And whilst I also recognise that some providers do go that extra step, linking with partner agencies and try and help their residents in that way, there are others that will unfortunately place domestic abusers next to victims, people who are, convicted of drug pushing, next to those that are trying to recover. And it is an unfortunate and awful set of circumstances to have in built up residential areas where we just get endless complaints about it. We really ought to have had housing here as well today to address some of these things. But I know that North Yorkshire is massive now, and there's a duty of care on housing to house North Yorkshire emergency temp, and it could be that citizens in Skipton are placed in Scarborough, whereas we might have once, when it was under SPC, have been really focusing on you had to have a Scarborough connection. Now it seems that you have to have a North Yorkshire connection, and that opens Scarborough up. If we've got space, put them in Scarborough, and I don't think that is fair to Scarborough residents. The report that we're looking at here, unfortunately, it says in my ward, Ramsell is up by 19% and Weapon is up by 39%, and that is significant. And my residents will want to understand what it is that they can do to try and offset that. And I know that there is some applications coming up in the future, so I won't go near there. But these providers, what they really could have, in my view, would be a tighter set of regulations from government, so that you're not just placing people with a roof over their head and a meal, but there has to be a tighter set of regulations to link in partner agencies so we can avoid these troubles. Thank you.
So can I just say, you did mention it's unfortunate we didn't have housing here. Last time we asked housing, they were able to demonstrate to this committee's satisfaction that the places went to local people, because we have enough demand in Scarborough with the cost of private rented accommodation and the dearth of socially rented accommodation that we need to fill those places with our own homeless. So there are one or two, I won't deny, that do come from outside the old Scarborough constituent and old Scarborough borough, but it's not a significant number. And frankly, we grow our own antisocial behaviour. We don't need to import it from anywhere else. So I just need to nip that one in the bud. I think the point though, Rich, about we need a round table discussion is well made. I'm not sure it's for the area committee because of the detail that you want to go into and the naming. But I think it would be really helpful if Rhiannon and Paul could facilitate with Inspector Regan and Housing, and you, Eric, Janet, Tom, anyone else who wants to be involved in a rather detailed understanding of the issues, because we can't speak absolutely frankly here, we're not going to make a huge amount of progress. Does that make sense? Is that a good suggestion? Can we take that as a way forward on that one? I'm really mindful we haven't looked at the crime, although you'd mentioned it, crime in any detail, and that David Jeffels has got a question. David, did you
It's a very brief observation, Madam Chairman. Under Operation Tornado, I'm sure that our police colleagues and councillors as well would be delighted to believe that there's only one supplier of drugs who has been arrested within the borough. The risk of appearing cynical, I'm quite sure the supplying of drugs is a much bigger problem than one individual.
I'm sure it is. Inspector.
In reference to Operation Tornado, that's one specific operation on that particular day. So that'll be an arrest made on that day in relation to drug supply.
We all wish it was right.
So that will be on that day of the operation. There will have been one individual arrested for drug supply on that operation. However, I believe there's some stats in the pack that suggests there's been some proactive work and an increase in the number of arrests made around drugs, which is why there's been an increase.
Okay. I think if we've got a good outcome for a further discussion, I think we'll draw a line under it there. I really thank you all for attending. It was a really interesting discussion, but you can't be absolutely frank in a public forum. So go and be absolutely frank in a darkened room. And if we have any further recommendations, they can come back to the area committee. Please don't think you've got to wait for the annual report any time that suits, really. I don't think, and we'll pick up the really interesting challenges about parenting orders. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, everybody. Okay, colleagues, Hi, John. Yes, it's you. You're the last substantive item on the agenda. We will. No. He's just cleaning up. Right, everyone, we are now on item 13. Unlucky for some, John, sorry. Welcome, John Holden, again, not a stranger to the committee, Head of School Organisation and Transport, to present the school annual report and update. Again, John, we've all had the information and the papers. If there's anything you particularly want to draw our attention to, please use a few minutes to do that, and then we'll go to questions, if that's all right.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think there's anything in particular, just a brief reminder. It's an annual report that we bring to this committee about a range of school-related issues. The report provides data the 31st of August last, so to some extent, slightly outdated. There's an apology would normally come in the February-March round of meetings, but there was a clash between this meeting and one of the other area committees, so we moved it back to today. As of 31st of August last, there were 48 schools and academies in the committee area, and the report covers a range of issues: school standards, suspensions and exclusions, special educational needs, funding, and school place planning issues. I would normally be accompanied by somebody who represents one of those other areas. Unfortunately, due to some urgent meetings with third parties, they couldn't attend. Clearly, I will take questions. If it covers all areas, I'm unlikely to be able to answer them all, but clearly I will take them away and come back with answers through the chair. That's okay, Chair?
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you. So because I was really late in digesting all the papers for the area committee, I emailed John at stupid o'clock this morning with my questions, and I see I've got an email from Amanda Fielding. Are you okay to do that? Right. So my first question was, apologies that I was late. What is the current provision, and what are we able to share about any future plans or any discussions that are ongoing around total mainstream provision? Targeted mainstream provision. Thank you, John.
Yeah. So we've got three existing TMPs, targeted mainstream provision, three TMPs in the area, in Whitby and secondary schools. We've recently undertaken an application round for schools and academies. When I say schools today, I will mean schools and academies. And we're delighted we've received interest from over 25 schools across the county. We've obviously reviewed those applications robustly, and we're now proceeding with 16 new TMPs over the course of the next year. 4 of those are in Scarborough, both primary and secondary, and 1 in Filey. Appreciate Filey's not covered by this committee. We do have a TMP in Malton and hope to progress a new TMP in Pickering. These will support children from the Scarborough and Whitby area if required.
That's good news, because I'm afraid we were a bit behind the curve here in Scarborough and Whitby, and we really struggled, and we only had provision in Whitby.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that was through a lack of ambition on the council's part or effort of colleagues in the SEN team. Clearly, we've been working with
schools coming forward, wanting to do it. Yeah, I understand that. My second question, and I think there isn't an answer, because funnily enough, Alison Hume touched on this, the MP, she was there earlier, was around Mission Coastal and understanding what that might mean for us and what the deliverables from that are. If you want to, yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it was recently announced that Scarborough, including Whitby and Filey, has been selected by the DfE as a priority area. I think that recognises that the challenges, some of which are reflected in the report, that we see locally: lower attainment, higher absence, greater impact on disadvantaged pupils. This programme has been targeted place-based support for schools, strengthening local leadership and tackling barriers to attendance and progression. Mission Coastal will align with work that the council is already doing alongside multi-academy trusts and other partners to strengthen, improve attendance and raise children's attainment. Crucially, it's an opportunity for North Yorkshire to help shape national solutions for coastal communities while delivering tangible improvements for our children and young people locally. This programme's at an early stage, and so we're currently engaging with DfE and other partners as to how it will roll out, and we hope to bring further, we don't hope, we will bring further information back to members in due course.
So some of our schools don't perform wonderfully well. So we would be looking to see, when we talk about deliverables, that's what we'd want to see then,
Yes.
better results. And I know it's a government initiative, so it's really hard to answer this question. When do you think would be a good time for an update?
I'm sorry, Chair. I can't.
No, that's fine.
I mean, I think clearly we can update certainly by no later than next year's annual report.
Yeah, I think
And before
I'm a bit keen on that we don't wait for an annual report.
Okay.
But if there isn't much to update, but there might be some plans maybe.
I think it's probably through liaison with yourself, Chair, as to when will be a sensible time to bring something tangible to report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last question I asked was really on behalf of John Ritchie, who's had to go, was around East Barnby. So I don't know if you're aware, but I'm sure some of you may have been to East Barnby. I didn't, because I went to Scarborough Girls' High School for Young Ladies. I was a failure, obviously. But is there any update that we can give them about that? Because it is temporarily closed for electrical issues, isn't it?
It is. Nothing in terms of the electrical work. However, just to give assurance that residential breaks are proceeding without disruption at both Bewley Park and Birch Hall Scout Camp. East Barnby staff have worked hard to make sure that that provision is maintained, and those staff are working with others within the council to have a look at both short-term and longer-term solutions for East Barnby. Again, we'll bring something back when we've got something to.
That's me hogging the question. So Derek and then Neil.
John, I hope we could seek an assurance from you that East Barnby, or it is not the start of the end for East Barnby, is this, if other options have been explored. Thanks.
I can only reiterate Councillor Basterman what I've just said. You know, the property service colleagues and others within Children and Young People Service are having a look at what work's required at East Barnby, and anything about longer term plans will be brought back in due course.
So I'm going to go back to Amanda Fielding, because I believe that we rent East Barnby from the Mulgrave estate. So if we don't own it, I think there's a really different mindset about approaching it, and we need to stress how important it is. I'd welcome a proposal from the floor.
Well, if I may just come back to Mr. Alden there, first and foremost, it's only about a couple of years ago that East Barnby was up against Bewley Park or something or other for investment of monies, which Bewley Park got their money. And that's why I'm fearful that this is a inverted commas backdoor method maybe to offload it. So I would propose that we as an area committee write to either Mulgrave Estates or North Yorkshire Executive seeking assurance that any lease would be renewed with North Yorkshire County Council for the provision of outdoor facilities for East Barnby.
Can I have a seconder for that? No seconding, and we all agreed on that. Yeah. Excellent, Councillor Basterman. Thank you for your intervention.
Chairman, that you joined the Children's ONS, but we did scrutinise these two outdoor leisures quite extensively some time ago.
I know.
So there is reports on that to go forward.
I know.
Substantially, okay.
And I know that ONS, the officers are bringing a report to ONS, but it's our children, our schools that use East Barnby, and it's an absolutely legitimate position for this area committee to take. So we will progress on that. And I'm looking forward to my first Children and Young People's ONS meeting.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to come back anyway. Is that once again, if we don't make this stance for the East, once again the East will lose out and it'll be back to the centre. Thanks.
Point well made. Councillor Swanwick, Neil.
Just to say, I wasn't putting my hand up to remind you that I wanted to speak. I was putting my hand up to second Councillor Basterman. I thought it'd be good if it was cross-party, because certainly
it was unanimous. We love unanimous.
It's not just cross Scarborough, but it's also Whitby as well. And
East. We'll go for East.
Yeah. I just wanted to pick up on the issue about attainment, and obviously I think we're all hopeful that this new initiative that the MP was talking about this morning will benefit the children in the area. But I have to say they are rather disappointing, are the results that are published in this report. Consistently 5% behind North Yorkshire, 5% behind national averages, well, certainly at the important level, grade 5 or above in English and maths. And I have asked this question before, which I didn't get a satisfactory answer to, and that is that we never get any statistics about what happens to the successful kids, beyond these reports about the attainment levels at school. And in the previous time I've asked that question, we get the answer that, well, you can look at what the ones that weren't successful because we provide figures for NEETs, but that's not quite what I want to see. I'd like to see that a lot of our local kids are actually getting to university and going on to do great and wonderful things. And we can't get this information from here. And I know you're going to say probably it's other agencies that would report on that, but I think the advantage of having kids in the neighbourhood who go to university is they sort of spread that message to their contemporaries that those sorts of levels of further education, higher education are achievable, and therefore it's worth working at school. So 2 points there. Why is the attainment lagging behind North Yorkshire and national? And would you be prepared to provide information to the next report that you do to this committee actually on what happens to the kids after school?
High achieve.
In reverse order, certainly not going to say we can't provide that information, Councillor Swanwick. I'll take that back, and if it's available and easily accessible, we'll look to include it. In terms of the reasons for the figures related to achievement, I don't think there's a simple answer. I think it's probably reflected in the fact that the Mission Coastal has been proposed, and obviously we've really all got a shared aspiration that brings with it success.
Just a quick supplementary. I mean, clearly, yes, I think if we knew what Mission Coastal actually would do, then we'd obviously be in a stronger position. We didn't get that information this morning, but no doubt we will in due course. But in order for Mission Coastal to be successful, we actually need to know what the problem is. And that'll have to come back to the local education authority to do some of that analysis, surely.
That's noted, Chair. I'll tell
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We know what they attain at school. We presumably know what A-level attainment is, but we don't track. And I don't think the label higher achievers is really helping, because people who are not that engaged will think higher achievers does not mean them. And actually we want to get so we're back to the old, what was it called? With Justin Greening's initiative. Opportunity areas. How do we increase social mobility? How do we get more young people to engage with school, to get qualifications, to get apprenticeships, to go on to have meaningful employment, whatever shape that is that suits that individual? Yeah. Okay. Has anybody got any further questions for John? Are we all? Yeah. And I will, I'll follow up with Amanda and copy you in, John, around Mission Coastal in particular, because we would really like to understand what the measures are and how we can progress that. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time. Right, colleagues, home stretch. Any other items? Does anybody dare? Thank you. The date of the next meeting. Oh, it's the work programme. Sorry. I'm just jumping down. I thought we've had a good session today. I appreciate all your attention as we get into the afternoon. We've got 2 motions going forward, one on food waste and one on East Barnby, outdoor education provision. There were some things that came up during the course of our conversations that I would like to add to the work plan. There's some that I think I articulated and you agreed. I'll work backwards then. The first one was getting youth justice in to talk about parenting orders and why we don't have them. Yorkshire Water coming back with their investment plans. So they're doing a lot of talk and there's lots of lovely pictures, but we can't put a pin in the map saying this is going to happen there. Yes, please. The goal action plan, I think they agreed to come back in. So we've had the strategy, they'll come back with the details. Actually, going to be another long day, but yeah, I'll get you a lunch with no mayo, Tom, I promise. Mission Coastal, we should add to our work plan. September might be too soon, but we'll put it on there. Do you want to add East Barnby to keep our eye on it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then there were the 2 public questions. What do you want to do about Danger Bank? Do you just want us to follow that up saying, can we have a time scale? Okay, and then the other one, and I declare an interest because I did go to the session, was community power. Do you want CAVCA to come and talk to you about, in some a bit more detail about the work they did and why it is that our communities, our residents, feel disengaged from not just us, but other organisations? No, yeah. But we might get a briefing on that rather, and then we can pursue it that way. Yes, that.
That's in Whitby as well. September meeting.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just on the community power one, which was, I think, the one by Mel Bonney, wasn't it?
It was.
I did have a word with Mel at the beginning to say, I know the report is not about anything to do with Whitby. Everything is about Scarborough, so I won't be commenting. But I do actually think that if it's coming back, then we should broaden it to include Whitby, because actually CAVCA do have some assets in Whitby as well.
I'll pick that up with Mel as well. So some of the engagement was done through the long-term plan and what is now Pride and Place. So that's where some of the data came from, and the community power fund that she's accessed. She says there are 100 sites across Britain who are looking at this. I don't know what her funding envelope was and whether it can be used outside of Scarborough. But as you say, she's got, is it Green Lane East?
She's certainly got Green Lane.
Yeah.
I think she might have something else as well.
Yeah. Okay, I'll pick that up with her and have a chat with her about how we, have I missed anything that we might add to the work plan? And do you feel as exhausted as I feel, Tom?
We did briefly talk about some sort of round table discussion on sort of HMOs and
I thought I managed to do that with that and gave it to Ree and Paul to progress.
Oh, if they're
so
person,
Leanne and
enough.
Paul and sorry, giving this title Inspector Craig, will progress that, and they will find a date and invite definitely the ones who have got the live issues. I have had issues in the past with Scorbygate. And then
all run by the same company.
Yep. And then once that date's available, then those that need to be involved or would be interested in being involved will be invited. But I'll follow it up with, I'll just drop him a note to make sure. But we've not lost it. But I do think there's this thing about a frankness of a conversation that you can't have in a meeting that's being videoed or recorded or whatever's happening to us today. So if there's nothing else to add to the work plan, I will close that work programme off. No other items, date of next meeting. Now we did circulate to note. So St John kindly pulled together our annual report. You can read that and see, if you've not already read it, see what things we've achieved last year. I would suggest, as the answer to the question that Mel posed, I was given that Whitby Cliff Lift was quite a big tick in the box, but there you go. There's a report on the bathing water quality meeting that we had, but in particular, the responses around the what you thought was the combined sewage outfall from Yorkshire Water from P-Zone Park, and there's a detail on there that is a North Yorkshire Council asset, and I've pursued that with Andy Crosley, so there's quite a lot of detail in that report. And then to note that although we had development of empty homes on our work plan, it's been sent to T3Es, TEEE, and as an overview and scrutiny, they're going to look at it. So although there's quite a lot of data for Scarborough and Whitby area, there's less data elsewhere in the county, so they're going to pull all that data together. And once that's gone through scrutiny, then Steve Reynolds will come back and talk to us about that. But the report, there's a statement on that to note. If there's nothing else, I will thank you all again for your attendance and attention and some cracking questions and 2 fabulous motions. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.